Chapter 1809. Lu Jinyu patted him on the shoulder. See, red packets may be tacky, but sister-in-law likes them. The rest of the group immediately agreed to prepare a big red packet, which tickled Yun Shusha to no end. The dishes were served one after another at the gala. The guests were holding plates in their hands as they chatted and toasted in front of the buffet table. Yun Qingmiao and Yun Qinli kept looking around in the crowd and finally spotted Gong Jie's back at a table. They exchanged glances, and Yun Qinli urged, "Sis, go and find out his name." "Why do you want me to find out?" "Because you're dressed up prettily today. Men naturally can't refuse a beautiful woman." Yun Qinli's words were clear and logical. Yun Qingmiao, on the other hand, was secretly delighted. She subconsciously tidied her hair and looked at herself in the mirror before finally walking toward Gong Jie. Gong Jie held his plate and looked at the dazzling array of dishes, but his gaze eventually landed on the dessert section. Like Yun Shusha, he had a sweet taste and especially loved desserts. Therefore, desserts were irresistible to him. Gong Jie had just reached out his hand when a woman's hand suddenly reached out from his right and touched it. His sensitivity jolted and he quickly retracted his hand, frowning in displeasure. He had an extremely serious misophonia and usually did not allow anyone to touch him. Even if he did, he would wear gloves in advance. He did not like anyone to touch him, except for the people close to him. Thus, while feeling displeased, Gong Jie could not help but look to his side. He saw Yun Qingmiao standing at the side with a red face and looking at him awkwardly. She appeared to be at a loss and looked apologetic. "Sorry. I didn't do it on purpose." Gong Jie's face was cold as he scrutinized her from head to toe. His frosty gaze made Yun Qingmiao look even more innocent. I just wanted to try this dessert too." She forced a smile and gave a seemingly reasonable explanation. Unfortunately, unlike other men, Gong Jie's eyes were sharp enough to tell at a glance that this woman was deliberately trying to get close to him, which was why she had played such a small trick. Alas, this method of hitting on him was too boring. He had seen enough. Gong Jie had no lack of women around him. With his handsome appearance and domineering aura, as one of the heirs of the Gong family, his power was shocking. The women around him were like a river, flocking to him like a flock of ducks. There were even some who used unscrupulous means to get close to him and attract him. However, he was used to ignoring women. Unless there was a biological need, women were dispensable to him. He didn't need love. Therefore, he would definitely keep a distance from women unless he had a great need for them. Yun Qingmiao felt embarrassed as she looked at his cold face. This man seemed to be very difficult to approach. He looked noble and arrogant. His face was indifferent, and his eyes were especially cold and sharp like icicles that could pierce one's skin. Gong Jie turned around expressionlessly. Clearly, he had no intention of paying attention to her. Yun Qingmiao was naturally indignant about being splashed with cold water in front of everyone. Thus, she bit her lip, stepped forward, and gently tugged at his sleeve. Chapter 1810. Gong Jie turned around, raised his hand, and splashed the red wine all over her face. While Yun Qingmiao came back to her senses with the sudden noise, only to realize what the man had done to her. He had splashed red wine all over her face. Drops of red wine slid down her cheeks and eventually drenched her hair and dress. She looked extremely disheveled under everyone's watchful eyes. Gong Jie's cold gaze fell on her. His deep voice was as cold as ice, and his face was expressionless. "Don't touch me with your filthy hands, okay?" Yun Qingmiao opened her mouth to speak, but when she looked at his cold face, she felt a wave of sadness and even more humiliated. I don't mean anything else. It's just that," Gong Jie impatiently interrupted her explanation. "I don't mean anything else. I just find you annoying, so stay away from me." She was so embarrassed that she froze on the spot. Her feet seemed to be nailed to the ground, and she could not take a step forward. The guests looked in her direction, and for a moment, she was standing in the middle of the discussion. Yun Shusha heard the strange commotion and rushed over with her dress in hand. However, she was stunned when she saw the scene. "Shou Jie, what's going on?" Gong Jie saw her, and the coldness on his face was immediately replaced by a gentle expression. "Sis, Shou Jie, What's wrong with her? Yun Shusha glanced at Yun Qingmiao, who was surrounded by the crowd, and then at the mess she was in. She could not understand what had happened. It's nothing. It's just that she touched me with her filthy hands just now. It's really annoying. Gong Jie's voice turned cold as he said, if it weren't for Sis's important day today, she can forget about keeping that hand of hers. His voice was not loud, but it reached Yun Qingmiao's ears clearly. She could not help but shudder at such a cold and frightening statement. It was so cold that it penetrated her heart. These words were not false at all. In the past, at a private party, a woman had tampered with his wine glass in order to get Gong Jie. When the Gong Jie found out, one of her hands was crippled on the spot. Perhaps, on the surface, this man was so docile and well-behaved. This tenderness was only limited to Yun Shusha. Other than her, the Gong Jie treated women rather coldly. This was something Yun Qingmiao had learned firsthand. For a moment, she was embarrassed and aggrieved. She covered her face awkwardly, lifted her messy dress, and hurriedly left. Yun Shusha furrowed her brows, not knowing what to say. Gong Jie saw her eyebrows tightly knitted, suddenly a little nervous. Sister, are you angry with me? How could this be? You don't look well. I'm not angry. Yun Shusha smiled helplessly. But Shoro Jie, there are some people that you don't have to care about. Gong Jie said guiltily, I'm sorry. I'll restrain myself next time. Yun Shusha smiled. All right, good boy. She gently stroked Gong Jie's head, her eyes full of indulgence. Yun Qingmiao returned to her room, and Yun Qinli arrived shortly after, only to see her sister huddled in a corner and crying silently. Sis, are you crying? Chapter 18:11. Breaking down, Yun Qingmiao interrupted her and questioned, You're not the one who embarrassed yourself in front of so many guests. Why are you making sarcastic remarks here? Yun Qinli was speechless. Yun Qingmiao was crying so hard that her eyes were red and swollen. The thought of being splashed with wine and humiliated in front of so many people just now filled her with resentment and nowhere to vent. Hence, she did not hold back in her tone toward her older sister. Yun Qinli, however, snapped, I'm not the one who splashed red wine on your face. Do you have to be so angry at me? Yun Qingmiao snorted but did not say anything. She just kept sobbing, clearly feeling aggrieved. Yun Qinli walked to her side, squatted down, and suddenly whispered, I heard that man call Yun Shusha sister earlier. Could they be long-lost siblings? Sister. Yun Qingmiao looked up with reddened eyes in suspicion. He should be Yun Shusha's younger brother. Judging from their appearances, the two of them do look very similar. Why? 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 Yun Qingmiao broke down and wailed. Why does Yun Shusha have so much? She has such a handsome fiancé who is so powerful that he even booked an entire island for her engagement party. Not only that, do you see the accessories she's wearing? Do you see that pair of engagement rings? Do you see that priceless gown she's wearing? Why? Why does she deserve to be doted on like a princess? Yun Qinli frowned and suddenly said, I asked around earlier. This private island isn't booked. Then, what is it? This is one of the private properties under Shusha's fiancé's name. In other words, this island has long been under his name. Yun Qingmiao's eyes widened and she was speechless. Sister, have you heard of Disheng Financial Group? Yun Qingmiao shook her head, baffled by the situation. Never heard of it. What happened? I did some research. If I'm not wrong, Shusha's fiancé is the CEO of Disheng Financial Group. Yun Qinli's eyes were filled with jealousy and envy. So what? Yun Qingmiao, on the other hand, knew very little about Disheng Financial Group, so she did not take her words to heart when she heard them. Yun Qinli raised her eyebrows and looked at her in disbelief. So what? Sister, do you know the status of Disheng Financial Group in the country? Do you know how much Shusha's fiancé is worth? Do you know what it means to be the president of Disheng Financial Group? If Shusha's fiancé is the rumored mysterious young master of Disheng Financial Group, then it can be said that if Shusha marries this man, she will undoubtedly become a phoenix and enjoy a lifetime of glory. Is it that exaggerated? Haha. Don't you know how many real estate companies Disheng Financial Group owns? Whether it's finance, real estate, entertainment, vacations, star-rated hotel chains, medical care. Dishing's Polar Light Group has a lot of investments in every field. It can be said that with this identity alone, Yoon Shusha's life, haha, she'll really become a phoenix. As Yoon Chinli spoke, her eyes were filled with undisguised jealousy and hatred. Chapter 1812. After marrying him, she would not have to worry about her life's glory and wealth. Among the guests earlier, even the royals and political leaders of other countries, as well as the honorable president, were present. It went without saying how outstanding Mu Yaja's status was. Yoon Chinli was extremely envious. However, she could only look on helplessly. In her heart, however, she started to hate Yoon Shusha for being such a jinx. In her opinion, a woman with such a background like Yoon Shusha was nothing more than a typical Cinderella. Apart from her pretty face, what else did she have? How could she be worthy of Mu Yaja, who was of such a high status? To her, someone like Yoon Shusha, who could marry a rich young master with a net worth of tens of millions, was already very enviable. Now, especially after experiencing such a grand and romantic engagement ceremony, her jealousy toward Yoon Shusha had seeped into her bones. What right did she have? What right did Yoon Shusha have to marry such an outstanding man when she had nothing? How many people were envious of her for marrying into a rich family? What about her? Comparing oneself to others was truly infuriating. Yoon Qingmiao was also feeling conflicted. After witnessing the materialistic nature of the big city, she yearned for a life of luxury. Her mood also became impetuous. She desperately wanted to integrate into the upper-class society and befriend an outstanding man like Mu Yaja. She did not have high expectations. As long as it was a man half as capable as Mu Yaja, she would go after him. Alas, she was met with a rebuff from the Gongjie. Yoon Qingmiao felt unbalanced. What right did Yoon Shusha have but not her? She did not know what tricks she had used to make a man like Mu Yaja fall head over heels for her. It seemed that she was quite capable. On the surface, she looked pure and untainted, as pure as ice and as pure as jade. Who knew how despicable she was in her bones? She's really the reincarnation of a vixen. I don't know what kind of despicable methods she used, but look at Mu Yaja, he's so obedient to her. Me. Sis, let's work harder, too. Who knows, maybe we can find a man who's more outstanding than him. Yoon Chinli encouraged. Yoon Qingmiao narrowed her eyes. Although she sneered without saying a word, the ambition in her eyes could not be concealed. After the engagement ceremony ended, Yoon Shusha and Mu Yaja sent off the guests. Not long after, another uninvited guest arrived. When Mu Linfeng and Mu Shumin appeared at the venue, Yoon Shusha was caught off guard and stood rooted to the ground. Mu Yaja was not too surprised, however. He knew that this man would eventually show up. With Mu Shumin's help, Mu Linfeng leaned on his cane and looked at the newlyweds with a dark expression. When he saw Mu Yaja hugging Yoon Shusha's shoulder, he sized her up with a cold gaze and let out a bone-chilling sneer. The venue was completely sealed off today. Those who could not produce an invitation were not allowed to enter. When Mu Linfeng and Mu Shumin arrived, they were stopped outside the venue because they could not produce an invitation. It was only when the guests had left that he was able to sneak in. Mu Linfeng did not know that Mu Yaja had prepared this engagement ceremony at first. He thought back to when Mu Yaja had said that even if he got married, he would not touch the Mu family's assets, but he did not believe it. Chapter 1813. In the end, when he found out that Mu Yaja had meticulously prepared such a grand engagement party, he was shocked. He knew that it was because of this engagement banquet. Although it was not a high-profile event, many important guests were invited. The sound of the wind naturally fell into his ears. How could he believe it? Engagement party? This rascal did not use any funds from the Mu group. How did he have the ability to organize such a grand engagement party? He was full of doubts as he rushed to the venue with Mu Shumin. However, the scene before him made him turn pale with fright. Without using the Mu group's funds, the engagement party was actually so grand and dignified. At the same time, this surprised him and vaguely made him suspicious. When he wanted to enter the venue, he was stopped at the door. This infuriated Mu Linfeng greatly. Who was he? He was Mu Yaja's second uncle. Why did he need an invitation to attend his nephew's engagement party? How could this be? Mu Linfeng felt like he was going crazy. If it were not for the 2 holes in his nose, he would have been angered to death. He was filled with hatred. Mu Shuminit was also rebuffed. She rushed all the way here but was stopped at the door. She had lost all her face. Hence, when she saw Mu Yaja and Yun Shusha smiling as they sent the guests off, she suppressed her anger with great difficulty and did not explode on the spot. When Mu Yaja saw them, he still gave them some face and called out coldly, "Second uncle." However, he ignored Mu Shuminit as if she was invisible. Mu Shuminit was so angry that she almost vomited blood. Just as she was about to flare up, Mu Linfeng held her down. Only then did she swallow her anger and calm down. "You still have the cheek to call me second uncle?" Most of the guests had left, so Mu Linfeng stood at the door and knocked his walking stick on the floor. He said angrily, "What do you mean by this? What are you trying to do by coming to this island without telling everyone in the Mu family? Are you trying to rebel? Or will you only stop when you anger me to death? Second uncle, you're exaggerating." Mu Yaja hugged Yun Shusha tightly, but his expression was indifferent. "Shusha and I should invite guests who sincerely wish us well for our engagement party. As for those who treat us coldly and have bad intentions, there is no need to invite them." Bad intentions? Mu Linfeng frowned deeply, but he was so angry that he laughed. "Rascal, are you trying to anger me to death? Didn't I warn you not to have anything to do with this woman? The sooner you cut off the relationship between you and her, the better. I don't approve of her, so naturally, I won't allow her to take half a step into the Mu family. I've told you this clearly, but you didn't listen, did you?" Gong Jie heard the commotion and walked to the door. However, when he saw this scene, a cold light flashed in his deep eyes. A cold arc appeared on his lips. He walked to Yun Shusha expressionlessly, but his exceptionally cold gaze landed on Mu Linfeng. Mu Linfeng was so angry that he did not notice that the indifferent man standing behind Yun Shusha had completely exploded in anger. "I heard about your engagement from someone else. You hid it from everyone in the Mu family and actually came here to get engaged with this unknown woman? I think you're going to ruin the Mu family's reputation. Shut up. Shut up." Chapter 1814. Gong Jie and Mu Yaja spoke in unison, almost at the same time. As soon as he said that, the 2 men exchanged glances. Gong Jie's eyes, however, were filled with inexplicable hostility. He instinctively pulled Yun Shusha aside and looked at Mu Yaja unhappily. His eyes were burning with anger as he pointed at Mu Linfeng and Mu Shuminit. What's going on? He had thought that this engagement ceremony would receive everyone's blessings. However, these 2 people had suddenly jumped out to criticize him. Gong Jie sized up the middle-aged man and woman standing in front of him. Based on their words, he could tell who they were. They should be from the Mu family. However, they had been so aggressive from the moment they appeared. They even insulted his sister and called her a wild woman. These words fell clearly into his ears. What wild woman? When Gong Jie heard this, he was filled with anger but had nowhere to vent it. He held her hand tightly, and every joint in his body stiffened. Yun Shusha was shocked by Gong Jie's anger. She could not help but reach out to comfort Gong Jie's shoulder. However, she saw him glaring at Mu Yaja and questioning sternly, "How dare they call my sister a wild woman? Who gave them the guts?" Mu Linfeng was inexplicably furious when he heard this. Where did this arrogant brat come from? How dare he say such things? What did he mean by who gave them the guts? This man's tone was so arrogant. Did he know who he was shouting at? If he knew, he would probably feel the greatest remorse. Me. It seemed that this brat was a typical example of a young and impetuous man. He probably did not know who he was offending. Mu Linfeng was so angry that he could not speak. Mu Shuminit stood at the side and mocked, "Who is this arrogant brat? Looking at his face, he seems to be this wild woman's biological brother. The sister is shameless and wants to climb up the social ladder. As the brother, he should be shameless and want to use his sister's relationship with the Mu family to climb up the social ladder." Shut up. Mu Yaja's eyes darkened as he reprimanded Mu Shuminit. Mu Shuminit was so angry that he frowned, and his face twitched. Yaja, who are you asking to shut up? I asked you to shut up. Mu Yaja was fuming. He stared at Gongjie holding Yun Shusha's waist and said coldly, let her go. She's my sister, of course, I have to protect her. In the past, she was bullied because I wasn't around. Now, I won't let anyone humiliate her. As he spoke, he did not let go of her hand. He suddenly regretted it. This was only an engagement, and he had to watch as his sister was humiliated. Looking at the situation, it wasn't the first time this had happened. Gongjie did not dare to imagine how much his sister had suffered when he was not around. What did this mean? This meant that this man could not protect his sister at all. This meant that he did not have the ability to do so. How could he be assured to hand his sister over to this man? He did not even have a reason to convince himself. At the thought of this, Gongjie shielded Yun Shusha behind him even more. His protective stance agitated Mu Yaja even more. Chapter 18:15. She's not only your fiancée, but she's also my sister. She's my most important family member. Don't forget that I warned you before that if you let my sister suffer even the slightest grievance, I'll flatten the Mu group overnight. The anger that the two men had been suppressing was now unleashed without any restraint. For a moment, the two of them faced each other. Sparks flew, and the surrounding atmosphere turned cold in an instant. Gongjie curled his lips and tightened his grip on Yun Shusha's hand. With a look of disdain, he said, moreover, it's just an engagement. She's not officially your wife yet. Yun Shusha glanced at Gongjie and then at Mu Yaja. She bit her lip in annoyance and opened her mouth to say something, but Gongjie said in a low voice, sister, don't say anything. Shoujie, sha. Gongjie put a finger on her lips, indicating for her to keep quiet. I'm sorry, sister. I can control my temper in any matter, but not in this matter. Shoujie, you, listen. Just based on the fact that the Mu family called her a wild woman of unknown origin, I can't sit back and do nothing. With that, Gongjie looked coldly at Mu Linfeng, but his gaze was full of hostility. Mu Linfeng, on the other hand, was taken aback by his insolent word. Flatten the Mu group overnight? Mu Shumin repeated, but she felt that it was very funny. She suddenly let out a cold snort. You brat, not only do you have a big temper, your tone is also not small. I don't know what you're going to do to flatten the Mu group. Mu Linfeng was stunned and kept quiet. Why did he have a feeling that this man wasn't just spouting nonsense? He glanced at Gongjie and gradually felt that although this young and arrogant man had an extraordinary aura, he was not a simple person. That was because he saw Gongjie's eyes. Those were the arrogant eyes of a king. They were insufferably arrogant and unruly. It was as if he could trample the whole world under his feet if he wanted to. Gongjie sneered and mocked, remember, my sister is nobler than you. You're not worthy of my sister. Mu Shuminit's eyes were filled with anger, but they were full of mockery. Not worthy of her? Who do you think your sister is? She's just a lowly commoner. Do you think that you can climb up the ranks and enjoy all the glory and wealth just because you're related to the Mu group? I think you're dreaming. Mu Yaja coldly replied, shut up. You have no right to speak here. Scram. Mu Shumin looked at him in disbelief and said, what did you say? You're asking me to? Mu Yaja, I think you've lost your mind, haven't you? This woman is really scheming. I don't know what kind of bewitching potion she used to make you so infatuated with her. How can you side with an outsider? I'm your aunt, but what about you? He actually dared to say such disgraceful words. How dare you speak rudely to me for an outsider with ulterior motives? How presumptuous. Mu Yaja said coldly, who's the one speaking rudely? Shusha is my fiancée. In the future, she'll be my only wife. Show some respect. Chapter 18:16. Who else could it be? Mu Shuminit sneered, but every word of hers was laced with poison. Tell your sister, don't be delusional. Don't think that just because she's sucked up to the Mu family, she can really become a phoenix. Yun Shusha clenched her fists, so angry that she was at a loss for words. Gongjie's heart ached as he hugged her tightly. He was so angry that his face turned cold. He looked up, and his eyes were sharp as he said word by word, Make her shut up. A fully armed man behind him took a step forward and slowly closed in on Mu Shuminit. Mu Shuminit looked at the man who was closing in on her. Seeing that he was fully armed, she inexplicably panicked. You! What are you doing? Just as she finished speaking, she felt a black shadow flash in front of her. When she suddenly reacted, that man had flashed behind her like a ghost. His large palm grabbed her chin and forcefully twisted, only to hear a very heavy sound. With a catcher sound, her chin was instantly dislocated. The immense pain made Mu Shuminit break out in cold sweat. She held her injured chin and stammered, but because of her dislocated chin, she couldn't utter a coherent sentence. The man waved his hand again, and a fiery hot slap landed on her face. Instantly, she couldn't find her bearings. Mu Shuminit was also someone who had served in the army for 3 years. She had trained her skills beyond that of an ordinary person. Even so, to her, this man's fighting ability was quite terrifying. She didn't even see how the man made his move. She felt the world spinning around her, and the next second, she was pathetically placed on the ground. This slap almost perforated her eardrums, and there was a loud buzzing sound in her ears, causing her to see black and white in front of her eyes. Even her brain was a little dazed. Yun Shusha was tongue-tied at this sight. She then turned to look at Gong Jie in shock. Mu Yaja's expression changed, but he didn't say a word. In fact, even if Gong Jie didn't do it, he would have done it. This Mu Shuminit was really too presumptuous. When Mu Linfeng saw this, he was inexplicably shocked and furious. Stop. Continue to hit her. Gong Jie, who was holding Yun Shusha in his arms, casually said this. Mu Linfeng was about to stop him, but the man pushed him aside. Mu Shuminit was in so much pain that she was in tears. However, in the next second, she felt her collar was pulled up again. Then, she was ruthlessly slapped, one after another, until she didn't even have the chance to cry out in pain. It was a horrible scene. Although it was a manziziz's, it was a mercenary. But for mercenaries, there was no such thing. He only obeyed the orders of his employer. Whatever the employer asked him to do, he would do it without hesitation. His execution was top-notch. Mu Linfeng stood at the side, looking anxious and angry. He looked at Mu Yaja, who was watching indifferently from the start, with a hateful expression. You're just going to watch your aunt be humiliated, aren't you? Mu Linfeng glared at him fiercely, his voice trembling badly. Mu Yaja sneered. Only in this aspect, he and Gong Jie were on the same side. Second uncle, you're wrong. Aunt's mouth really needs to be disciplined. Since that's the case, why don't we discipline her properly? Otherwise, he really doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Chapter 18:17. Therefore, since someone was willing to help him, why wouldn't he do it? As a nephew, he could not be rude to his aunt, or he would be offending his superior. However, if Gong Jie were to step in, it would be considered as helping Yun Shusha vent her anger. Even if Gong Jie did not step in this time, Mu Yaja would still secretly teach Mu Shuminit a lesson. Stop. Stop hitting him. Mu Linfeng stomped his feet in anger. Gong Jie remained expressionless as he held Yun Shusha's shoulders and looked coldly at Mu Shuminit, who was being punched and kicked on the ground, without any intention of backing down. It was as if this was the only way to appease his unhappiness. Herber was one of the top experts by Gong Jie's side. As a veteran mercenary of Mercenary Paradise, he had a lot of experience. After 10 years of war, his body was practically made of steel. Even the blood flowing in his body was like a strong liquid made of molten iron. Don't be fooled by the fact that he didn't use much strength in that punch. Even so, with just a few slaps, she would definitely fall apart. Mu Shuminit was beaten black and blue, but even so, Gong Jie had no intention of retracting his order. He had decided to beat this woman, who had offended his sister, to death. In front of Yun Shusha, he might be obedient and docile like a sheep without any temper, but other than that, in the eyes of his subordinates, Gong Jie was a rather vicious and merciless person. How vicious and merciless was he? It could be said that he was an extremely vicious person despite his young age. Anyone who angered him would end up in an especially tragic state. Yoon Shusha's heart skipped a beat as she watched. Even though she detested this woman for speaking without restraint, Gong Jie's subordinates were still too ruthless in their actions. She could not bear to watch any longer. This was definitely not a joke. If this went on, one could imagine that even if she did not lose half her life, she would have a few broken ribs. But the current atmosphere was too strange. While Mu Yaja remained unmoved, Gong Jie's face remained impassive. In fact, his lips even curled into a sinister smile. Thus, she said fearfully, "Shoro Jie, stop hitting me. If this goes on, she'll lose her life. Sis, you don't have to speak for her. Have you forgotten what she said about you?" Gong Jie said expressionlessly, "How dare this woman humiliate you? I will never forgive her." Mu Linfeng retorted furiously, "How arrogant of you. Do you know who we are? How dare you touch the Mu family? Do you know what kind of disgraceful thing you're doing? If you continue beating him like this, you'll beat him to death. How dare you?" Gong Jie glanced coldly at Mu Linfeng and said nonchalantly, "I want her life. You dare to bully my sister? You deserve to die. Otherwise, do you think that the Gong family can be bullied by any Tom, Dick, or Harry? The Mu family? Who do you think you are? Do you think that the Mu family can do whatever you want and bully others? I'd like to see if the Mu family or the Gong family is more capable." Mu Linfeng was stunned and looked at him in disbelief. The Gong family? What did this man just say? The Gong family? Could he be from the Gong family? Chapter 1818. The only thing she was concerned about now was that Mu Shuminit was about to lose her life. Even though she hated her, today was the happiest day of her life. She did not want to cause any bloodshed because of one person. She would not feel good if they parted on bad terms because of this. Hence, she said in a pleading tone, "Shoro Jie, listen to me, okay? At least not here. Today is my engagement day. Don't make such a big fuss. Don't overdo it. Okay?" When Gong Jie heard this, he frowned but did not object forcefully. He took a deep breath and opened his eyes abruptly. With a sharp gaze, he said, "Stop." Almost at the same time he finished speaking, Herber stopped and retreated behind him, ready to receive orders at any time. "You're too heavy-handed. What if you kill her?" Gong Jie reprimanded impatiently. Ba looked confused. Didn't he ask him to be heavy-handed? Today is my sister's important day. How unlucky would it be if I kill her and get covered in blood? Gong Jie reprimanded again. Whatever Yoon Shusha said, it was the truth. According to his original intention, a woman like her should be killed as soon as possible. However, his sister said that he could not kill anyone on such an important day. He immediately changed his stance and stood on the same side as Yoon Shusha. The corners of Mu Yaja's eyes twitched fiercely. This Gong Jie was really not an ordinary person. In front of his subordinates and Yoon Shusha, he was Satan on one side and an angel on the other. Earlier, he had viciously said that he wanted Mu Shuminit's life. Once Yoon Shusha spoke, he immediately flapped his wings like an adorable little angel and flew around Yoon Shusha. Mu Linfeng walked to Mu Shuminit only to see her lying face down on the ground, unconscious. When he turned her over with difficulty, he saw that her eyes were rolled back, her face was covered in blood, and her entire body was limp. Especially her two arms, they were curled up at an extremely twisted angle, as if they had been severely fractured, twisted into a terrifying angle. It was a tragic sight. It was already not easy to keep her life. Mu Linfeng's mind was in a mess. Hence, he did not care much and hurriedly called for people to carry Mu Shuminit to the island's infirmary. As he escorted Mu Shumin away, he glared fiercely at Gong Jie with a hostile look. His heart was full of vigilance. This man was simply a terrifying existence. Mu Linfeng snorted coldly and left in a hurry. Mu Yaja expressionlessly ordered people to clean the mess on the ground. Gong Jie was unhappy to see Mu Shuminit's infirmary. Hence, he comforted Yoon Shusha. "Sister, don't spoil the fun because of her. She bullied you, and I've already ruthlessly retaliated. With today's lesson, she definitely won't let you suffer in the future." "Shoro Jie, don't you think you've gone overboard?" Yoon Shusha interrupted him. Gong Jie was stunned and looked at her with a hurt expression. How have I gone overboard?" When did you become so violent? Yoon Shusha looked at him sadly. She felt that she had inadvertently caught a glimpse of the terrifying and cold expression on his face just now. Somehow, she felt that this younger brother in front of her seemed a little unfamiliar. Gong Jie's gaze was stunned and he was full of grievances. Sister. How can you say that? How am I violent? Chapter 18-19. You're still saying that you're not violent after beating her up like that. But she bullied you. I'm standing up for you. I don't need you to stand up for me, Yoon Shusha said angrily. I don't like such a violent Shoro Jie. You couldn't even bear to hurt a stray cat in the past, but now you can actually say something as scary as I just want her life. You weren't like this in the past. She didn't think that it was wrong for Gong Jie to stand up for her. However, she felt that Gong Jie had a scary side to him that she didn't know about. In her memory, her Shoro Jie wasn't such a ruthless person. Perhaps it was because of some kind of telepathy. She felt that Shoro Jie was a little different from the child who always stuck behind her when he was young. Back then, Shoro Jie was innocent, cute, and innocent. Sometimes he was mischievous, sometimes he was docile, but at least he was kind. However, the Gong Jie of today, although he was as docile as a lamb in front of her, she realized how scary he was when he accidentally revealed his disguise in front of her. She wasn't a ruthless person. Mushu Minute did go overboard just now, but Shoro Jie actually said that he just wanted her life. How could he say such cruel words so easily? Yoon Shusha couldn't help but suspect his identity. She suddenly asked suspiciously, Shoro Jie, what do you do for a living? Can you tell me? Why do you have such a powerful personal bodyguard? Why are you always so busy, flying all over the world? Why have you become so ruthless, so arrogant that you don't put anyone in your eyes? What is your identity? I have a feeling that you're hiding something from me. Is that so? Gong Jie was stunned. He wanted to say something but stopped himself. He didn't dare to say it. He was afraid that if he told the truth, his sister would be afraid of him and distance herself from him. Yoon Shusha saw his evasive gaze and was disappointed. You don't want to be honest with me, do you? Gong Jie said hesitantly, Sis, don't tell me. Sis, don't let your imagination run wild. Gong Jie was a little flustered as he comforted her. Don't let your imagination run wild, okay? I didn't mean to hide it from you, it's just. Just what? Yoon Shusha narrowed her eyes. Shoro Jie, I know I shouldn't interfere with your personal life. But there are some things that I really don't understand. I have a feeling that you and I are different. I'm like a commoner, but you give people the feeling that you're the supreme ruler who controls life and death. When she stood beside him, she would often feel suffocated by his domineering aura. Gong Jie remained silent, unsure of how to come clean with her. She smiled helplessly and casually said, Since you're willing to be honest and want to hide it from me, then continue hiding it from me. After saying that, she suddenly let go of his hand. Feeling nervous, the man reached out to grab her hand. But she coldly avoided him. Gong Jie looked at her with hurt, but he could only watch helplessly as she held onto Mu Yaja's arm and slowly walked away. Mu Yaja looked at him coldly and then, as if to provoke him, slowly walked away with a playful smile. Gong Jie was so angry that he clenched his fists and gritted his teeth. Do you think I should be honest with her about my identity? Chapter 18-20. Yo-Yo rolled his eyes. He took a sip of his cola and suddenly leaned forward mysteriously. He lowered his voice and said, Do you know why I hid the fact that I'm in the Hurricane group from Mommy? Why? Gong Jie asked, puzzled. Yo-Yo sniffled and said pitifully, If Mommy found out that I was involved in smuggling, she would beat my ass. He sighed and shook his head. That's why I tried so hard to hide it until now. Even Mommy doesn't know my identity. In Mommy's eyes, I'm an innocent and cute child. So, I'll play this role well. If she finds out that I've been doing these things behind her back, I'll definitely be beaten up badly. Gong Jie was utterly impressed. You were able to hide it from her for so long without being found out. That's because I'm good at acting. Yo-Yo was quite proud. Gong Jie was silent. He drank the dry red wine in his glass and said dejectedly, She said that I've changed. She said that I've become more ruthless. Yo-Yo, is that true? Yo-Yo sipped on his cola and gave him a look, telling him to figure it out for himself. Gong Jie frowned. What do you mean by that look? I think Mommy's right. Uncle, you're really ruthless. Yo-Yo spread his hands and pretended to be innocent. How am I ruthless? Yo-Yo rolled his eyes and said, haha, hanging a pirate on a cargo ship under the scorching sun for 3 days and drying him alive. Only my dear uncle would do such a heartless thing. Gong Jie was silent again. He hijacked my cargo ship and shot one of my crew members. Leaving him under the scorching sun for 3 days is considered a light punishment. Then using a live hostage as a gun to practice shooting, only you would do that, right? Yo-Yo asked again. Gong Jie defended himself. That hostage was the leader of a terrorist organization and wanted to assassinate me. Yo-Yo was speechless. Gong Jie felt good about himself and said, actually, I feel that I'm very kind. Yo-Yo looked at him as if he was looking at a hopeless idiot. Uncle, I think your worldview might be a little different from Mommy's. Why? Yo-Yo seriously. Look, in Mommy's worldview, killing, arson, smuggling, armed, these people are defined as bad people. Gong Jie nodded thoughtfully. But there are so many options, how many of them do you have? Have you killed anyone? Yes. Have you set fires? I bombed the presidents. Do you smuggle? Do you have an armed group? Yo-Yo shrugged helplessly and then laughed. Look, in Mommy's heart, you're a heinous villain. Gong Jie was instantly disheartened and felt that there was nothing left to live for. Also, Mommy might be angry because she feels that you're hiding something from her. She actually cares about you a lot and wants to integrate into your world, but you seem to be deliberately hiding things from her, making her feel lonely. After all, Mommy's heart is more sensitive and fragile. Then what should I do? Should I tell her everything? Yo-Yo said, then let her know that you've killed people, set fires, and committed all kinds of crimes. Gong Jie was speechless. He couldn't tell her the truth. Chapter 1821. If you tell Mommy the truth, she will be frightened. If she finds out that the brother she has been taking care of since young is such a scary person. TSK, TSK, TSK. Yo-Yo was gloating over his brother's misfortune. Then help me think of a solution and tell me how to deal with this. Gong Jie ordered. Little Munchkin said proudly, I won't do it. Do as you see fit. You have to deal with your own problems, don't push it to others. With that, he stood up and was about to leave. Gong Jie, who was behind him, suddenly flashed an evil smile. You want to leave? Sure. My dear little nephew, I don't mind dragging you down with me. When the time comes, I'll tell your mommy that you're in the same organization as me, and you've also killed people, set fires, and even hacked into the Pentagon's defense network to smuggle firearms. Guess what her expression will be like? Yo-Yo paused and turned around, giving Gong Jie a murderous look. How dare you? Do you think I won't? Gong Jie was not afraid of the threat in his eyes. Yo-Yo clenched his fists. He could not understand Gong Jie's thoughts and did not know if he would betray him. Hence, he took a deep breath and walked back to the table, forcing himself to sit down in front of him. Gong Jie poured him half a glass of Coke gently and pushed it in front of him. If I have to think of a solution, why don't we not deal with it? What? Deal with it coldly. Don't mention this matter. When this is over, make up an identity for her. Mommy will believe you. Gong Jie was speechless. So simple. What else can we do? Mommy can be smart sometimes, but most of the time, she is very stupid. Gong Jie nodded thoughtfully and suddenly looked at Yo-Yo with a deep gaze. Yo-Yo. Yes. Can I ask you a question? What is it? Gong Jie suddenly approached him, stared into his eyes, and asked in a deep voice, Are you willing to go to the headquarters with me? My father wants to see you. Yo-Yo's expression froze as his eyes widened in astonishment. Your father wants to see me? According to his position, he is your superior. According to seniority, you should call him grandfather. Yo-Yo frowned but did not say a word. Suddenly, he asked curiously, Why does he want to see me? As the #1 genius of the Hurricane Group and one of the developers of the Heavenly Eye, I'm naturally curious about your true face. He has already mentioned this to me for a long time, but he always considered that you might not be willing, so he never put it on the agenda. It just so happens that he wants to ask for your opinion. Yo-Yo fell silent again. Gongjie asked, why? You don't want to? No. Yo-Yo shook his head and said truthfully, before I knew he was my grandfather, I had always wanted to see him. In my heart, he is a very powerful paragon. He was able to develop the Hurricane Group into such a magnificent territory. He is a genius leader and the person I admire the most. After a pause, he suddenly laughed and said, but after knowing he is my grandfather, I am not so impulsive about wanting to see him. Why? Yo-Yo said truthfully, because I don't know what identity I should use to see him. Gongjie was speechless. Chapter 1822. Unless Mommy is willing to return to the Gong family. If that's the case, then I will be willing to see him. Gongjie slowly poured himself a glass of red wine. His slender fingers gently caressed the rim of the glass as if deep in thought. Yo-Yo pursed his lips and smiled helplessly. No matter what, he would always be on the same side as Mommy. If he did not care about Mommy and returned to the Gong family with Gongjie, then Gongjie's father would be able to recognize him at first glance based on his facial features. When that time came, he would find out that it was Mommy. If it caused Mommy trouble, that would not be something he wanted to see. Gongjie sized him up and suddenly remembered that Yun Shusha was unwilling to return to the Gong family because of Mu Yaja. He felt wronged. He asked, Yo-Yo, why do you think a woman can sacrifice everything for love? Yo-Yo was stunned. The corners of his eyes twitched violently as he silently complained, Uncle, I'm your nephew, not an encyclopedia. You don't have to ask me everything, do you? Because Uncle feels that my little nephew knows everything from heaven to earth. Since you're so smart, you'll definitely be able to give me an answer. Gongjie lazily rested his chin on his hand and looked at him silently. Yo-Yo was silent. Then, he calmly stirred the cola in his glass. He bit the straw and blew on it until it bubbled. He took a sip and said vaguely, because we have different views on love. Love, to a man, may only be a part of a man. But to a woman, it may be her everything. When Gongjie heard this, he was shocked. He sighed and said, Yo-Yo, are you a relationship expert? You've said the essence of it in one sentence. Yo-Yo looked at him with disdain and said coldly, I can't be considered a relationship expert. This is what I've read in books. Gongjie's lips curled into a smile. He felt that this little nephew of his who was still childish but spoke with such sharp words was too cute. I still can't understand women who see love as their everything. Yu glanced at him from the corner of his eyes and asked nonchalantly, Uncle, have you been in a relationship before? Gongjie frowned. Why are you asking this? Asking about your relationship history? Why, can't I ask? I don't have a relationship history. Gongjie replied. Yo-Yo clicked his tongue and said disdainfully, no wonder. So you've never been in a relationship. Uncle, have you been with a woman? What? That means, a relationship between a man and a woman without a romantic relationship. For example, a spiritual partner. Yo. Fart. Gongjie couldn't help but spit a mouthful of red wine on Yo-Yo's face. Yu shut his eyes abruptly. His rosy cheeks were flushed red, and he instantly looked a little disheveled. His long and thick eyelashes, in particular, were stained with the wine. His delicate brows furrowed slightly in displeasure, but he managed to keep his emotions under control and did not explode. Gongjie looked at him blankly and said apologetically, Yo-Yo, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. Yo-Yo didn't want to bother with him. He took a warm handkerchief and carefully wiped his face clean. Chapter 1823. Gongjie's mind was in a mess. Please, it wasn't that he didn't pay attention to his manners, it was that he couldn't tolerate it. No. Stop. Okay. What was a physical relationship? Who had ever seen such words coming out of the mouth of a 7-year-old child? Had anyone ever seen it before? Therefore, he was caught off guard and was caught off guard. This child was really a mischievous child. Gongjie held back his laughter and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. What do you mean by a physical relationship? What do you mean by your little brain can't think? A physical relationship is a relationship between a man and a woman that is maintained purely from a biological point of view. If I were to use a simpler term to describe it, it would be bed partners. Gong Jie was dumbfounded. Yo-Yo tilted his head elegantly and asked calmly, why? Am I wrong? What nonsense is your little brain thinking about all day? How do you even know about this? Cough, cough. Gong Jie was once again flustered. He felt that it was a little too far-fetched. Yo-Yo smiled and said, I've been studying psychology and sociology recently. Yes, that's what I've been studying recently. Gong Jie lectured him sternly, it's too early for you to be concerned about this. I've always been so ahead of myself. It's good to spend more effort on your studies. Gong Jie smiled and said, don't look at this messy psychology. Have you revised your homework? Yo-Yo curled his lips in disdain and said casually, I've already prepared my homework for the third-year science course in high school. So, it's really boring normally. Gong Jie was still dumbfounded. You're lying. How was that possible? He was only in elementary school at this age. How could he understand such profound knowledge in high school? He had already prepared for it. That was so unbelievable. Gong Jie took a deep breath and found it hard to believe. Yo-Yo said disdainfully, these questions are very simple. I'll know them after flipping through the books once. As for the humanities, I'm not interested. Anyway, it's all rote memorization. I'm not interested in preparing for it. Gong Jie, no wonder this child's EQ was so high. It turned out that he spent all his extra time studying psychology. That was too scary. When his sister gave birth to him, she must have had a genetic mutation to give birth to such a shocking genius. I'm guessing that you've never been in a relationship before, Mom's actions. In fact, women were more emotional creatures, and most of them lacked a sense of security. That's why they values their family's family. Actually, I understand mommy. Mommy ts right. Mommy tease her s her tttt she tst. Therefore, in order to protect her family, she did not hesitate to give up everything t. Even if I told you, you wouldn't understand. You don't understand women. You make it sound like you know a lot, Gong Jie said indignantly. Mommy and I depended on each other since we were young. I'm the one who understands mommy the most. Don't I have the right to speak? Gong Jie was speechless. I'm talking to a cow. I don't even have a woman at my age. You won't understand even if I explain it to you. Yo-Yo mocked. Chapter 1824. He suddenly glanced at him meaningfully from the corner of his eyes and snickered. Don't tell me. Uncle is still a pure and innocent virgin? Gong Jie's handsome face instantly flushed red with shyness. He furrowed his brows and tried to pretend to be calm, but even so, his body's reaction was very honest. Even the tips of his ears had turned red. Yo-Yo's mouth opened into an O shape. He was overjoyed. No wonder. It turns out that uncle is a little virgin. Gong Jie pretended to be serious and looked at Yo-Yo, who was snickering. He pretended to threaten him. Don't laugh. Fart. You. Gong Jie was furious. Yo-Yo, are you looking down on me? Of course. Uncle is already 24 years old. You probably haven't touched a woman's finger. Well, it's not that I haven't touched a woman. Gong Jie said unwillingly. Previously, I was drugged by a woman at a party. I almost died in her hands. Yo-Yo's eyes lit up when he heard that there was gossip to dig up. He curiously went forward and asked, what happened after that? I broke one of her hands. Yo-Yo was stunned. So violent. It was very like his style. Then, how did you solve it? Gong Jie cleared his throat awkwardly and coughed a few times. Suddenly, he said, I soaked in an ice pool for a night. Yo-Yo was dumbfounded. Uncle, are you so cruel to yourself? Gong Jie touched his forehead. Yo-Yo smiled and said, women are a very charming little animal. I feel that mommy is a completely different person from before she fell in love. In the past, she was a standard career woman. She always liked to shoulder all the responsibilities on her own as if she was indestructible and could bear all the responsibilities. After she fell in love, she instantly turned into a clingy little mommy. Daddy spoiled her like a little princess. It was only after she fell in love that I realized how cute she was when she acted spoiled. Women still need to be pampered. Of course, This is something that some single dogs who have never been in a relationship will never understand. Gong Jie felt that he had been hit hard again. He was suddenly amused by Yo-Yo's serious and innocent expression. He couldn't help but reach out and pinch his cheeks. Xiaobao, how can you be so cute? You're so smart. His phone suddenly rang. Gong Jie glanced at the screen and saw that it was a call from Yun Shusha. He exchanged glances with Yo-Yo. Yo-Yo gave him a look, and Gong Jie immediately picked up the phone. Sis, little Jie, Yun Shusha's slightly helpless and guilty voice came from the other end. Just now I shouldn't have been so fierce to you. Sis was wrong, I didn't do it on purpose. Yun Shusha's voice sounded helpless and weak. After she calmed down, she realized that her tone had been very hurtful. In her guilt, she called him to apologize. I'm being overly sensitive. Perhaps, you're hiding it from me because you have a reason that you have to tell me, but in my eyes, you're still the innocent and cute little Jie in my heart. The things I said before were all done on impulse. I wasn't serious. Don't take it to heart. When Gong Jie heard this, he smiled slightly and his heart suddenly softened. Chapter 1825. Upon hearing this, Yun Shusha's expression softened. Gong Jie had always been like this. When she was young, he couldn't bear to see anyone bully her. In the past, whenever she was bullied by older children, he would always be the first to protect her. He was like her guardian angel, always the first to appear by her side. She still remembered that once, Shoro Jie got into a fight with a group of children to protect her. There were many of them, and he could only fight alone. Naturally, he could not win against them all. He was covered in injuries and his face was bruised and swollen. She was so scared that she cried herself hoarse. She tried to go forward a few times, but he pushed her away. In the end, it was the adults who rushed over. Only then did the group of children stop and disperse. However, he was beaten until he almost fainted. That was the most overboard incident. It was also the incident that left the deepest impression on her. Yun Shusha said, I know. As for my identity, I'll find a suitable time to tell you. Okay. After hanging up, Gong Jie and Yo-Yo gave each other a high five. I told you. Mommy will definitely regret being so fierce to you. She's the most soft-hearted. Yo-Yo was the one who knew his mother best. After the engagement banquet ended, Jiangshan actually did as he promised and obediently sent over a big red packet. Yun Shusha opened it and saw that it was a 7-figure sum. It was a generous gift, and she did not know whether to laugh or cry. She could almost imagine Jiangshan's aggrieved expression at this moment. She didn't expect that her unintentional joke would be taken seriously by him. When she returned to her room, she looked at the mountain of presents and felt happy and sweet. At this moment, she finally understood why the bride was the happiest woman in the world on the day of her wedding. It was probably because every relationship went through ups and downs before finally bearing fruit. Being able to spend time with the person you love was probably the most blissful expression. At this moment, a line from a song suddenly flashed across her mind. I've finally waited for you. Luckily, I didn't give up. Happiness comes with great difficulty, so people cherish it even more. Suddenly, the sound of approaching footsteps came from behind. Yun Shusha suddenly came back to her senses. Just as she was about to turn around, a pair of strong arms tightly wrapped around her waist. Mu Yaja hugged her from behind and pulled her into his embrace. He lowered his eyelashes and buried his handsome face in her hair, greedily sniffing the fragrance of her hair. What are you thinking about? His gentle and magnetic voice was close to her ears. His warm breath constantly brushed against her elegant and enchanting neck, but it caused her entire body to tremble. Just as she shrunk her shoulders back, who would have thought that he would suddenly press against her ear and intimately suck on her cute little earlobe, but it caused her heart to beat like thunder. What? Don't be like this. Yun Shusha gently pushed him away. Being teased like this, she felt a little ticklish, so she rebuked, You're making me itchy like this. Who asked you to be so seductive and seduced me? Don't tell me you're allowed to push me away. The man smiled, but he was not forced back by her rejection. Instead, he became even more aggressive. He bit her earlobe and intimately sucked on it. After a few teasing, Her face immediately reacted and spread like a fire. The blush spread from her cheeks to her ears and even her body was slightly hot. Chapter 1826. Don't. Yoon Shusha couldn't stand the tickling and giggled. His breath on her neck made her unbearable. Just as she was about to beg for mercy, he grabbed her shoulders and suddenly turned her body around. He hugged her waist and supported her forcefully. Mu Yaja lowered his gaze, admiring her bashful and seductive look, especially her pair of well-defined eyes. Her eyelashes fluttered like butterfly wings, which accentuated her coquettishness. She looked extremely seductive when she smiled. Little idiot, do you know? Mu Yaja nodded and leaned closer to her. He looked at her from an extremely close distance. Their lips were connected and the tips of their noses were touching. Even her eyelashes could feel the touch of his face clearly. Such an intimate distance made her heart beat like a drum. Every sound seemed to be echoing in her ears. He pressed his lips against hers and breathed out, but left a sentence that made her face burn even more. You're so beautiful right now. Yoon Shusha was so shy that she couldn't understand. She clenched her fists nervously and didn't know how to respond to him. Even if it wasn't the first time they were intimate, her reaction was still like a young girl. She bit her lips shyly and didn't know how to react. She clasped her hands behind her back and intertwined her fingers tightly together. Her delicate lips were stiff as if they were tightly pressed together. His praise carried a hint of ambiguity. No matter how stupid she was, she could feel that his body was tense at this moment, all of which was telling her that he desired her. Do you know? I've been holding it in until now. I really want to take you. Mu Yaja whispered sweet nothings into her ear, but it made her heart beat faster and she couldn't resist. She didn't realize that when this man said sweet nothings, he could be so deadly and bewitching. She pursed her lips and half rejected him. That's not very good, right? Right now, it's not night time yet. You don't have to care so much. Mu Yaja hugged her and wanted to kiss her red lips. Yoon Shusha avoided him again. Looking at his urgent attack, she didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Wait. The curtains are still open. She blushed as she looked at the wide-open floor-to-ceiling window in shock. She wanted to signal him to close the window. However, Mu Yaja was indifferent. He didn't care if the window was closed or not. He held her in his arms and couldn't wait to kiss those delicate lips that were silently seducing him. Once he kissed her, he couldn't bear to part. He hugged her tightly and couldn't bear to let go. The deep kiss made her blush. Window. Mu Yaja didn't have the patience to listen to her. No man liked to drag things out, especially when he had endured for such a long time. It wasn't easy for him to deal with those annoying fellows and finally have some private space with her. Hence, some things naturally had to be done in a race against time. Chapter 1827. Her heart calmed down a little. In the next second, her body was in free fall and fell onto the soft cement bed. Because of the elasticity, her body bounced a few times and quickly sank into it. The man's tall body covered her and pinned her down, making her unable to move. Yoon Shusha complained in grievance, "Woo! You're so heavy." Just as she finished speaking, she heard the man's low laughter. In the next moment, he hugged her and turned around. When she reacted, she had already switched positions with him. He was lying on the bed, and she, on the other hand, was already straddling him in an extremely suggestive posture. A certain point coincidentally allowed her to clearly feel the slightest change in his body. It was menacing, but it made her heart beat like thunder. The man teased her and held her hand, intertwining his fingers with hers. He teasingly asked, "Looks like you prefer to take the initiative." When Yoon Shusha heard this, her face became even hotter. Luckily, the room was dark at this moment, so the man did not see her embarrassed expression. She was not used to this position. Sitting on top of him like this made her feel very uneasy. It was inevitable that she was at a loss. In this aspect, compared to men's aggressive attacks, women were often more passive. It was difficult for them to take the initiative to conquer a man. To her, this was an even more difficult problem to overcome. However, Mu Yaja was extremely interested. He wanted to see how charming and enchanting it would be if she was on top. However, with this idea in mind, This woman was not enlightened. She was stunned for a long time and did not move. Mu Yaja reached out his hand and touched her cheek, across her shoulder and neck. At the same time, he easily untied the silk sash on her back. The gown immediately slid off her shoulders, revealing her chest. She lowered her head and helplessly bit her lips. She was at a loss as to what to do. Her helpless look made him laugh. "What, you don't know what to do?" The man's question made her even more embarrassed and at a loss. From the beginning to the end, she lowered her head, not knowing how to respond or what to do. The man chuckled and said, "What an idiot." Taking advantage of the situation, he took off her clothes and climbed onto her shoulders and neck. Then, he moved his hands all the way down, carrying out a mysterious exploration. Yun Shusha bit her lips. Her face was so hot that it was about to burn. He took off the gown on her body, and the beauty in front of him was almost unobstructed. She didn't know what to do, so she could only freeze and let him explore her body. When he went deeper, she couldn't help but feel a little helpless, so she couldn't help but tense up. The man's evil charming smile, loved her so shy appearance, kissed her lips, pried open her lips, with a strong offensive, all the way to the deep invasion. She involuntarily moaned. When she came back to her senses, she realized that she had involuntarily moaned. However, she felt even more ashamed and covered her mouth. It was a little embarrassing. Why couldn't she hold it in? How could she? The more she thought about it, the more embarrassed she felt. "I like it." He kissed her soothingly. "I like your voice. You're not allowed to suppress yourself." Yun Shusha pursed her lips, but she also noticed the tension in the man's voice. Chapter 1828. That was the place where he was most sensitive. When she kissed him just now, this action was more like a silent provocation. The man felt an electric shock spread all the way to his limbs and bones, especially. Since the wedding, he had been enduring himself until now. There were some things that did not need to be secretive anymore. It was better to be more direct. Thus, he nimbly took off her gown. To him, the current her was even more stunning than when she was in her gown. His body also started to become excited. In this position, he took possession of her. From the initial gentle invasion, until later, he could no longer hold himself back and gradually became fierce. Mu Yaja, she became more and more uneasy from his fierce attack and could not help but softly call out his name. Her weak voice was like a kitten's, but she did not know that this made it harder for him to restrain himself. The emotions that he had suppressed for a long time were like stormy waves, instantly drowning her. In the midst of the extreme joy, she was a little helpless. In the midst of his emotions, he could not help but lean close to her ear and bite her earlobe, murmuring her name over and over again. "Shusha," he gently called out her name. His charming voice made people unable to resist him. She closed her eyes and allowed herself to sink into it. When she fell into it, she was drenched in sweat. Gradually, she could not take it anymore. She panted and her breathing lost its frequency and became a little hurried. "Don't, slow down." She was a little unable to bear his overbearing possession, but she could not muster any strength at all. She could only beg for mercy weakly. Unfortunately, her pleas for mercy did not enter his ears at all, and he allowed his senses to continue to work on her. When it ended, she finally could not take it anymore and collapsed in his arms. Her entire body was soft and powerless. She nestled in his arms and panted hurriedly like a patient who could not breathe on her own. He looked at her and felt that her current appearance was both cute and funny. It was just one round, but she was so disappointing that she collapsed. He really did not know what to say about her. "Didn't I tell you to train more? You're so weak." He scolded her in dissatisfaction, but his tone couldn't hide the adoration. She was panting, but her entire body was in a daze. Whatever he said, she couldn't hear a single word as she focused on regulating her own breathing. Mu Yaja didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He also couldn't bear to torment her anymore. He hugged her and fell on the bed, constantly stroking her back. He knew that she probably didn't sleep well last night. That was why he was in such a sorry state when dealing with matters of the heart. He hugged her, his fingers going through her hair as he pulled her head into his embrace. Even if there was a part of his body that was not satisfied yet, he could not bear to take her anymore. There was no hurry to continue once she recovered her strength. He couldn't torment her too much. The next time this stupid woman saw him, he was afraid that her legs would go weak. Under his comforting words, her breathing gradually calmed down. She leaned against his chest and closed her eyes. Just now, for a moment, she felt that her brain was short of oxygen and her entire body was floating in the cloud. This man, in this aspect, was extremely strong. He always had the ability to torment her until she fell apart. At that time, he was sitting back and admiring her seductive posture. The more he looked, the more he couldn't bear to let go. Chapter 1829. Suddenly, there was the sound of footsteps outside the door. Muyaja was alerted and furrowed his brows. Then, there was a knock on the door. Xiao Chen's voice passed through the door and into their ears. "Daddy, Mommy, are you there?" Hearing little Chen's voice, Yun Shusha was jolted back to her senses from her exhaustion. She was greatly startled. Before they could react, a click was heard. It seemed to be the sound of the door opening from the outside. Seeing that no one was responding, Mu Chen actually swaggered through the door. "Daddy, Mommy?" Mu Chen had already walked through the door with a confused look on his face. When Yun Shusha realized that the child had already walked through the door, she was so shocked that she wanted to scream, "Oh, my God! Why wasn't the door locked?" Mu Yaja, on the other hand, was extremely calm as he pulled the blanket over her body. He, on the other hand, elegantly covered himself with his suit jacket. He was considered fully armed. He didn't make a sound, but he didn't expect that Mu Chen didn't walk in at all. The room was divided into two areas. One was the walk-in closet and the living room, and the other was the bedroom. The two areas were separated by an arched door, and the bedroom was at the innermost area. Therefore, when Mu Chen walked in, he first walked around the living room. When he didn't see anyone, he said, "Oh," and turned to leave the room. How could this naive little fellow have guessed that at this moment, his daddy and mommy were having some kind of friendly conversation? However, due to his good upbringing, he didn't take another step inside. After all, he had been taught etiquette since he was young. When he entered someone's room, without the owner's permission, he would never step into the bedroom. Therefore, he didn't even walk into the bedroom. When he saw that there was no one in the living room, he went straight out. He closed the door on his way out. Yun Shusha's heart finally settled down. It seemed like it was a false alarm. After being frightened by Mu Chen, he broke out in a cold sweat. Mu Yaja lowered his eyes and saw that she was still in shock. He couldn't help but laugh and pinched her cheek. "This one won't be scared. What a coward." Yun Shusha glared at him angrily. He still had the nerve to say that. She was so angry that she was speechless. She hit him on the shoulder and said coquettishly, "Why didn't you remember to lock the door when you came in?" "I forgot." When he opened the door and saw her back, he was completely mesmerized. How could he remember that the door was unlocked? He was only looking at her. Naturally, he couldn't care about anything else. "You forgot." Yun Shusha didn't know whether to laugh or cry. If the child came in just now and saw such a scene, how awkward would that be? His casual remark about forgetting to lock the door gave her quite a scare. Mu Yaja, however, did not seem to realize his mistake at all. "It's fine. He doesn't know." Yun Shusha was speechless. This son of his didn't know anything about the matters between men and women. If he walked in and saw them, he would probably only blush, but he wouldn't know what they were doing. Yun Shusha didn't know what to say to him. "Go and lock the door," she urged. Mu Yaja smiled playfully and caressed her burning cheek. "Lock the door? Why? You still want to?" Chapter 1830. However, Mu Yaja wanted to tease her. Therefore, even though her cheeks were unreasonably hot, he still said, "If that's not what you mean, then what do you mean? Aren't you just worried that if the door isn't locked, you'll be disturbed again?" Yun Shusha was embarrassed to death by him. She immediately pushed his shoulder and glared at him, but there was a hint of wanting to say something. "You're bullying me. This life can be considered to be in your hands." She was angry, but the corners of her lips gradually lifted into a smile. She was at her wit's end when it came to this man's occasional bad taste. It was obvious that he was making fun of her. However, She was very thin-skinned, so she couldn't do anything to him. He hugged her, but smiled. What do you mean by your life is in my hands? You sound so wronged when you say that. Isn't that so? Yoon Shusha pouted coquettishly. All right. Whatever you say, it's the law. Mu Yaja hugged her and coaxed her softly, magnanimously not caring about her quick tongue. He got off the bed, went to the door, and locked it. Yoon Shusha's heart finally settled down. It seemed that if the door wasn't locked, she wouldn't feel safe. Mu Yaja turned around. As he moved, the suit on his body suddenly fell to the ground. In an instant, his perfect figure, which was like a sculpture of a god, was exposed to the air. But he didn't feel embarrassed at all, so he walked over in such a grand manner. Yoon Shusha glanced at him. Her gaze fell on his golden ratio figure, which was comparable to an international model's. His sexy abs and mermaid line were filled with an extremely seductive aura. Especially that pair of strong and powerful arms, which made him even more beautiful and suffocating. As she looked, her face couldn't help but turn as red as blood. Even though the two of them were already considered intimate, at this moment, she still felt her face burning when she looked at his naked body. Mu Yaja saw that her deer-like gaze was fixed on him from beginning to end. The corners of his lips curled up slightly, but he smiled playfully. Have you seen enough? Yoon Shusha was stunned. When she came back to her senses, she met his mischievous eyes. She pursed her lips. You should put on your clothes. Wear clothes? Mu Yaja smiled wickedly. I thought you liked it. Seeing you staring at me like that, I thought you liked it. Mu Yaja. He was making fun of her again. Yoon Shusha was so angry that she was at a loss for words. In the end, she was so angry that she laughed. He walked forward and hugged her. At that moment, he was extremely greedy for this brief moment of warmth between the two of them. The two of them fooled around on the bed for a while. Yoon Shusha was tossed around by him until she was exhausted. As a result, she actually fell asleep in his arms. Mu Yaja saw that she was so tired that she fell asleep. He didn't want to disturb her. He folded the quilt for her, kissed her forehead, and left the room. At this moment, it was already close to evening. When Mu Yaja walked out of the room, Lu Jinyu and Jiang Shun had already been waiting for him at the door for a long time. When they saw that he was fully dressed and looked energetic, the tacit understanding between the brothers made them immediately feel the subtle changes in his body at this moment. It seemed that boss and sister-in-law had returned to the room and must have had a good time. Chapter 1831. In his impression, Mu Yaja had always been an ascetic man. Little did he know that his boss was actually a man who was passionate on the inside. On the surface, he looked dull, but deep down, he was still very, It could only be understood, only understood. Jiang Shun put aside these random thoughts and walked up to him. He then whispered a few words into his ear. Upon hearing this, Mu Yaja nodded and pursed his thin lips slightly. There was a medical center in the castle that was set up for emergencies. When he was preparing for the engagement ceremony, he had considered the possibility of an emergency, so he specially deployed a medical team from the island. He did not expect it to come in handy. At this moment, Mu Linfeng was in a rather bad mood. When Mu Yaja arrived, Mu Shuminit was lying on the bed with a pale and lifeless face. His face was unbearably swollen because of the blood clots, especially the corners of his eyes and mouth, which required several stitches. Although the wound would heal, it would inevitably leave a scar and there was a risk of disfigurement. It was said that Mu Shuminit had a few broken ribs and his nose bridge was also broken. Gong Jie's subordinates were vicious and merciless. They did not hold back when they attacked, and it was obvious that they wanted to kill her. Mu Yaja had the ability to stop him, but he did not do so. Mu Shuminit could not blame anyone for his current state. His mouth had offended someone he should not have, so who could he blame? When Mu Linfeng saw him, his heart was in a mess and he had nowhere to vent his anger. When he saw a certain man appear in front of him with a stern expression, Mu Linfeng felt that his dignity was being challenged. You still have the cheek to come here? Mu Yaja sneered and did not give her any face when he spoke. I didn't want to come over, but today is my engagement. Who would want to come to the ward and bring bad luck upon themselves? Mu Linfeng was so angry that he was at a loss for words. His face was extremely ashen, but after taking a deep breath, a cold smile appeared on his face. Haha. Good, very good. You little rascal, why didn't I realize that you were so capable before? Today, he and Mu Shuminit had rushed over with the intention of watching a joke. Initially, when he heard that Mu Yaja wanted to hold an engagement ceremony on the island, he thought it was ridiculous. Hence, his attitude was extremely contemptuous. It seemed that this brat really wanted to rebel. He actually stole the funds from the company's account and held this engagement without alerting the Mu group. It looked like he had turned a deaf ear to his word. Under Mu Linfeng's orders, Mu Shumin even went to check the financial group's account, but in the end, she made a huge blunder. Mu Yaja had never used any funds in the Mu group's accounts. Most of the funds were from the financial groups. It was surprising that Mu Yaja did not use a single cent from the family's accounts for such a big matter. Initially, when he said that he wanted to marry Yun Shusha, Mu Linfeng was furious and said that if he had the ability to get married, he should not use a single cent of the Mu family's capital. Mu Yaja agreed immediately, but on the surface, he seemed to be dismissive. Mu Linfeng thought that he was just boasting. Did he think that he could hold a grand wedding on his own after leaving the Mu group? Chapter 1832. Thus, Mu Linfeng did not think too much about it at the time. He only thought that his young and hot-blooded nephew was just being impulsive. At most, he would only be fierce with his words and talk on paper. How would he have the capital to hold such a grand wedding if he did not use the company's account? However, when they rushed over to take a look, Mu Linfeng and Mu Shuminit were so angry that they almost vomited blood. Without using the Mu family's capital, this engagement was not only held in a dignified manner, but it was also grand and sensational. How did his nephew do it? How did he manage to arrange such a grand event and even invite so many important guests? How did he manage to make an engagement ceremony that was even grander than the formal weddings of some of the rich and powerful families? How did he manage to do it? Mu Linfeng couldn't help but feel suspicious. Without using the company's account, how did he manage to make the ceremony so luxurious and dignified? Mu Linfeng was suspicious at once. In fact, although he was old and no longer as spirited and vigorous as when he was young, it didn't mean that he was stupid. All these years, be it Mu Yaja nurtured his power outside or set up his own businesses, even if he kept the Mu family under wraps and didn't leak any clues, it didn't mean that Mu Linfeng wasn't vigilant at all. He already had his suspicions long ago. Even if Mu Yaja's businesses couldn't compete with the Mu group's power for the time being, with his ability and capability, he was still young and capable. With his plans for himself, it wouldn't be long before he replaced the Mu group in a few years' time. Moreover, in recent years, his backbone had gradually shifted toward his private businesses. He even grafted many resources that originally belonged to the Mu group to the businesses under his name. He vaguely realized that this fellow had some selfish motives. However, he couldn't find any evidence. Moreover, he was preoccupied with handling the Mu family's affairs and didn't have the energy to keep up. He thought that as long as this fellow didn't go overboard, he could pretend that he didn't know. Moreover, he didn't find anything fishy. One thing he was certain of was that, in this aspect, Mu Yaja had handled it flawlessly and had managed to hide it from his discerning eyes. Thus, Mu Linfeng only had suspicions and didn't have any concrete evidence. However, today's engagement banquet once again aroused his suspicions. He had originally come with the intention of watching a joke, but in the end, he was ruthlessly slapped by Mu Yaja. Mu Linfeng only felt his old face burning from the slap, which was extremely embarrassing. Mu Yaja's engagement banquet today was truly an honor for his family. He had never seen anyone's engagement banquet on such a scale. Even in the world, only the world-shocking British royal wedding of the century could compare. However, it was not easy to compare a wedding and an engagement. Perhaps, this kid's wedding in the future would be even more sensational than this engagement banquet. It might even attract the attention of the world. With his temperament, he would probably do so. Mu Linfeng, on the other hand, was perplexed. He did not know where the young man got his strength from to be able to do this. Chapter 1833. Could it be that this brat had gone to the extent of borrowing money to support this event? Judging by the looks of it, this engagement banquet could not have been held without spending tens of millions of yuan. Could it be that he had owed tens of millions of yuan just to fulfill a promise and for this woman? However, he was not in the mood to care about this at the moment. The biggest surprise at this engagement banquet was that mysterious man. Mu Shuminit was ruthlessly taught a lesson at the engagement banquet. However, Mu Linfeng knew that this had nothing to do with anyone else. It was purely Mu Shuminit's own cheap mouth. Mu Linfeng admitted that he had always felt that Mu Shuminit was not a calm person. She did things in a high-profile manner, especially when she spoke fiercely and aggressively. It was easy for her to cause trouble from her mouth. Maybe it was because she had always been the core member of the Mu clan, so she was used to looking down on others. After all, the Mu clan had a prominent position in the capital. It could be said that the Mu clan was a prestigious clan that could cover the sky with one hand. Which clan had the ability to compete with the Mu clan? However, one had to remember that there was always someone better out there. It was not that there was no one who was more powerful than her. Today, he had really been slapped in the face. While Mu Linfeng was furious, he also felt that he had been utterly humiliated by Mu Shuminit. However, that brat was a little too arrogant. His words of flattening the Mu family overnight still left a lingering fear in his heart. What kind of monstrous power did this brat have to be able to say such words? Mu Linfeng was attentive and heard that sentence. I want her life. She bullied my sister and deserved to die. Otherwise, do you think that the Gong family can be bullied by any Tom, Dick, or Harry? Mu family? Who do you think you are? Do you think that the Mu family can do whatever you want and bully others? I'd like to see if the Mu family or the Gong family is more capable. The Gong family. Mu Linfeng was stunned at that moment. He could tell that this young man's features were similar to Yun Shusha's and that they were related by blood. The two of them were probably siblings and had a close relationship. However, this man's self-introduction and provocation of the Mu family's reputation left him in a state of shock. The Gong family. Mu Linfeng knew of such a family. The Gong family of North America was a huge Chinese family that controlled a world-renowned arms group. Although he was unwilling to admit it, the Gong family's power was more impressive than the Mu family's. The Mu group was powerful because it had the support of Juanfeng. It had been established for 100 years, and its roots were deeply rooted. However, the Mu family's power and influence. The Gong family was a huge family that controlled the war situation of the entire world. No matter who was involved in the Gong family's internal affairs, they would not take the Mu group seriously. However, this brat's of course. Could it be the Gong family that had a thunderous reputation? That meant, Yun Shusha is related to the Gong family. Mu Linfeng says as if they offended the Gong family, it might not be a good thing for Mu group. Who is that man? Mu Linfeng questioned him. Who are you talking about? The man who gave the order to beat Shumin into such a miserable state. Who else could I be talking about? Chapter 1834. Mu Yaja smirked. As you can see, that man has a powerful background. Auntie has offended him. Not only did she suffer today, but her life may also be in danger in the future. I can only hope that he doesn't take this matter to heart. Given that rascal's character, he'll bear grudges against anyone who touches his sister. Mu Linfeng's heart skipped a beat. Even he said so. It seemed that the man's identity was as he had guessed. It seemed that he was indeed from the Gong family. It seemed that the feud between the Gongs and the Mus was unavoidable. At the thought of this, Mu Linfeng suddenly felt a little resentful. This Mu Shuminit was always stirring up trouble for him. Usually, he could ignore those small fries, but this time, she had offended a big shot. How could he not be angry? Now that Mu Shuminit was still unconscious in bed, she did not know how big of a mess she had gotten into. In the end, would he not have to take responsibility for it? However, did Mu Linfeng not think about it? Could he really do it? What puzzled him the most was when did Yun Shusha get in touch with the Gongs? Was she not the Yun family's adopted daughter? Could it be? Was she an illegitimate daughter of the Gongs? This was not impossible. Mu Linfeng was no stranger to the Gong family. Speaking of which, the Gong and Mu families had some history with each other. The head of the Gongs, Gong Shaoying, had some personal grudges with the Mus. Mu Linfeng also had some inkling of the past between Gong Shaoying and Mu Sheng. Hence, the Gongs were an extremely fearsome existence to the Mus. Could it be that Yun Shusha was Mu Wanru and Gong Shaoying's daughter? At this thought, he felt even more restless. Mu Yaja glanced at Mu Shuminit and expressionlessly said, "When she wakes up, second uncle, take her away from here. Don't let her spoil our mood." His words were a little hurtful. The corners of Mu Linfeng's lips twitched violently. He looked at him sharply like an eagle and sneered. "Are you chasing us away? It's not that chasing is so unpleasant to hear. It's just that it's a little inappropriate for you guys to appear here. Now that the Gongs are here, second uncle, don't tell me you want to make a big scene. You." Mu Linfeng slammed the table and stood up, pointing at him and scolding. "You be asterisk starred. Which side are you on exactly? No matter what, she's still your aunt. It's fine if you don't care when she's being bullied right under your nose. But now that she's injured, not only do you not care, you even chase us away. Is this appropriate? I'm not on anyone's side." He only stood by his lady. Whoever bullied his wife's wife was his enemy. On the contrary, he was happy to see Gong Jie make a move on Mu Shumin. Given his status, it was indeed inappropriate for him to attack Mu Shuminit. Gong Jie was different, though. Mu Yaja sneered. "Even if he doesn't do anything, I won't sit back and do nothing. Aunt has gone overboard today. Since she spoke too fast, she should pay the price, shouldn't she?" Mu Linfeng was speechless. Chapter 1835. Second uncle, you're being too courteous. However, you don't have to give me any face. You just have to think of a way to protect yourself. When the time comes, it'll be fine as long as you don't drag me down. Mu Yaja left after saying that. He had only come over to check if Mu Shuminit was still breathing. He had thought that Mu Shuminit would be on the verge of death after Gong Jie's men had hit her so hard. However, he did not expect her to be so tough. In that case, there was no need for him to stay any longer. It wasn't that he was cold and heartless. He was indifferent to everyone in the Mu family. Whether they lived or died, it had nothing to do with him. Being able to make the scene look presentable was already the greatest dignity he had left for the Mu family. Mu Linfeng watched Mu Yaja leave. Looking at his cold and threatening back, he suddenly felt that he could not keep this chess piece around. In the past, he had thought that he could still keep this rascal around if he could make him repent and cut ties with Yun Shusha. After all, in the entire Mu family, Mu Yaja's talent and ability were unparalleled. His position was also unshakable. Mu Linfeng had originally wanted to hand the Mu group over to him so that he could achieve more glory and create a bigger empire. Mu Linfeng's original plan was to make use of him to expand his territory and expand the Mu group's territory. Mu Linfeng's original plan had been well thought out. However, Mu Yaja's attitude now made him bitterly disappointed. The chess piece that he had painstakingly nurtured now had his own thoughts and opinions. Most importantly, as he continued to become more powerful, he gradually began to go against his ideals. This was not something that Mu Linfeng wanted to see. Mu Linfeng was worried that if this continued, the Mu group would fall into Mu Yaja's hands. If this rascal had selfish motives and started to transfer the Mu group's resources to his own businesses, then the Mu group would be emptied sooner or later. He might do that. He could see that the rascal was very ambitious. It might not be a good thing for the Mu group to fall into his hand. The Mu empire that he had worked so hard for so many years might end up in someone else's pocket. The foundation that he had worked so hard for would end up in someone else's pocket in the end. In the end, it would all be for naught. Wouldn't that be a joke? No one knew a son better than his father. Although Mu Yaja was not his biological son, he had nurtured him for so long that he had some understanding of his character and methods. Thus, Mu Linfeng had no choice but to consider grooming the next successor. After much thought, he could not come up with a name list. Although the Mu group was huge and had plenty of talented people, no matter how capable they could not be compared to Mu Yaja and could not be mentioned in the same breath. Most of them were just jesters, and only a few of them were clear-headed. However, compared to Mu Yaja's business talent, they were still barely passable. Mu Linfeng had once predicted that there would not be a second person as brilliant as Mu Yaja in the Mu family within 100 years. Mu Linfeng was heartbroken at the thought of the person he had painstakingly nurtured going against him. He wanted to vomit blood, but he could not voice his bitterness. However, there was no other choice now. Mu Linfeng could only leave with Mu Shuminit dejectedly. Chapter 1836. Along the way, Lu Jinyu could not help but shudder at the thought of how Mu Yaja had argued with Mu Linfeng earlier. "Chief, aren't you afraid that the old man will make things difficult for you if you keep arguing with him?" Lu Jinyu said half-jokingly, "That old man is probably worried that you're here to usurp the throne. He's probably going to start looking for ways to cultivate his power again. When that happens, the situation will be disadvantageous to you." Mu Yaja looked at him calmly and nonchalantly. "Are you kidding me?" Lu Jinyu was stunned. Mu Yaja said coldly, "Do I still need to be afraid of him now?" "But, no buts." Mu Yaja interrupted him without allowing him to object. "I've already endured to the limit for today. Now that I've made my stand clear, that old man is just a salted fish struggling on his deathbed even if he wants to salvage something. After using me for so long, now that I've made my stand clear, he'll definitely find a way out for himself. Unfortunately, it's too late for that now." He had long realized that Mu Linfeng's so-called treating him as his own was, in fact, for his own benefit. The so-called thinking for his sake and wanting to protect his position in the Mu group was just too nice to hear. In the end, it was just for his own benefit and to protect his empire. Mu Sheng was still around, so he had no choice but to restrain himself in order to preserve the family's reputation. However, once Mu Sheng's last breath was gone, he would definitely make a move. All this while, Mu Linfeng had indeed treated him as his own and nurtured him wholeheartedly. However, the so-called nurturing was nothing more than using him to strengthen the Mu group before kicking him out of the door and enjoying the fruits of his labor. There was no such thing in this world, though. He had been used for so long, it was time for him to retaliate. This war had just begun. "Chief, don't worry. With us brothers around, we'll definitely serve you until the end," Lu Jinyu said with a smile. Mu Yaja's lips curled up, but his eyes were sharp as he revealed a confident smile. At night, there was going to be a bonfire dance party by the beach. The venue had already been set up. Thousands of tons of fireworks had been flown by air and were now arranged in the venue. These fireworks were all custom-made. Mu Yaja had put in a lot of effort. Yun Shusha changed into a gown and held Mu Yaja's hand. When they arrived at the venue, Yo-Yo and Gong Jie were fiddling with delicate fireworks. "Uncle, I heard that when this firework is released, it will turn into a heart-shaped firework in the air," Yo-Yo said in surprise. Gong Jie, on the other hand, had rarely come into contact with such things. Even though his career had always involved him dealing with gunpowder, he had never personally given up on fireworks. Hence, at this moment, he was fiddling with them like a curious child. "Are you setting off fireworks?" Gong Jie shook his head. "Nope." "Then I'll release the explosives." Yo-Yo, Yun Shusha stood at the side. She did not know whether to laugh or cry as she watched the comical conversation between her uncle and nephew. She was about to step forward when she heard someone calling her from behind. "Shusha." Yun Shusha turned around and saw Xiao Shui and Jiang Li. Chapter 1837. "You flatter me." Yun Shusha smiled and held her hand. Sizing her up, she pursed her lips and smiled. "You don't look bad in this outfit, either. I heard that there's going to be a bonfire party at your engagement party, so I pestered my husband to buy this outfit for me. It's Chanel's new winter collection, and it costs a few thousand yuan." My husband's heart ached when he saw it. Jiang Li smiled shyly, but she felt quite happy when Yun Shusha praised her. Yun Shusha said, "Your husband dotes on you a lot." "What?" "I was the one who pestered him to buy it. He usually doesn't spend more than this when he buys me clothes." Jiang Li exaggeratedly raised a finger and sighed helplessly. "It's rare for him to spend so much money, so I really envy you a lot." "There are times when I really envy you. Look, Why are you so lucky to be able to meet such a good man who pampers you like a little princess? As she spoke, she glanced at Mu Yaja with a blushing face. For some reason, she did not dare to look straight at this man who was as handsome as a god. Mu Yaja laughed. I only have one wife. If I don't pamper her like a princess, what if she runs away in anger? His humor made Jiang Li laugh heartily. At the same time, she was even more envious of Yun Shusha's good fortune. However, this envy was different from the jealousy of Yun Qinli and Yun Qingmiao. She, too, was sincerely wishing them well. Hence, she praised, your husband is very handsome today, too. The two of you look really compatible standing together. Mu Yaja smiled gracefully. Thank you. Jiang Li had a good impression of him due to his decent behavior. Compared to her slovenly husband, it was really infuriating to compare oneself to others. Xiao Shui, who was standing at the side, said, Shusha, Jiang Li has been infatuated with your husband today. You don't know this, but during the ceremony at noon, she couldn't take her eyes off your man. That saliva of hers, TSK. Yun Shusha chuckled. Really? Jiang Li panicked and grabbed Xiao Shui's hand. Hey! Don't mess with me. Since when did I drool? If Shusha hears this, she might misunderstand. All right. I'm just joking. Our Shusha knows my character. She won't take it seriously. Xiao Shui looked at Yun Shusha and asked, Am I right, Shusha? All right. You're the worst. Jiang Li gets shy easily. Don't tease her anymore. Yun Shusha asked, Why didn't you bring the child with you? When Jiang Li heard this, she frowned and said, I'm so angry just thinking about it. The child is so disappointing. I wanted to bring him over, but that guy kept wanting to play with Yo-Yo. But who would have thought that he would have a fever right before he set off? Recently, the temperature has been very low. Her fever is at 38 degrees Celsius. I have no choice but to leave her in the care of my mother-in-law. I can only do it myself. It's all right. When he recovers, he can play with Yo-Yo. There will be a chance in the future. Jiang Li smiled and said a little embarrassedly, that little guy seems to like Yo-Yo. He kept telling me that Yo-Yo is pretty, smart, and knows how to take care of people. He even said that he wants to marry Yo-Yo when he grows up. This child is so mischievous. He's so young, but he's already in love. Yo-Yo listened from the side, but he looked up helplessly. He didn't want to get married. Chapter 1838. Xiao Chen was squatting on the ground, playing with 2 firework sticks in his hands. When he heard the adults teasing each other, he could not help but perk up his ears to listen. Jiang Li looked at Yo-Yo and Xiao Chen with envy in her heart. Shusha was really lucky. She had a husband who doted on her, power, and 2 cute little fellows who were as obedient and sensible as elves. She was really a winner in life. She was very envious, but there were some people and some things that could not be envied. Yun Shusha smiled as she listened. She could tell that Jiang Lisheng's cute little girl liked Yo-Yo very much. She could tell from the time they were together at the Fairy Tale Valley amusement park. This little girl was always following Yo-Yo and calling him Big Brother. She was chattering non-stop and would not stop pestering him. Actually, she was more reliant on Yo-Yo. Although Yo-Yo was only 7 years old, he was more mature and sensible than many teenagers. He knew how to take care of people and gave people a very reliable feeling. When Yo-Yo was very young, she paid attention to the child's upbringing. Hence, under her training, Yo-Yo was very sensible, especially towards girls and young children. He was very gentlemanly and knew how to give in to others. The children all liked him. Among the children, he was especially famous as the king of the children. Hence, she smiled and said, He's a child. He's so young, so how would he know about love? He doesn't even know what marriage means. In the children's world, love is a very pure thing without any impurities. Although our Yo-Yo is 7 years old, he's always very sensible and considerate. He's very gentlemanly to girls, so many girls like to play with him. However, this child doesn't seem to like playing with other children. He's been very clingy and dependent on me since he was young. That's because Mommy is the person I love the most. Of course, I want to stick to Mommy, Yo-Yo said self-righteously. When Xiao Chen saw this, he immediately puffed out his chest and expressed his attitude. I love mommy too. Jiang Li was amused by the two children's innocent words. She looked at Yun Shusha enviously and said, Shusha, I'm so envious of you. These two children are really too cute. Why don't I exchange with you and let Yo-Yo be my son and Chen Chen be your daughter? Before Yun Shusha, as if he was facing a great enemy. He pouted and said pitifully, I don't want that. I only mommy. Yun Shusha. It was obviously a joke to tease the child, but this child actually took it seriously. Jiang Li, on the other hand, felt awkward when she heard this. Her lips twitched as she forced a smile. Squatting down, she reached out to hug Yu in disappointment and deliberately tried to curry favor with him. Yu, can you be Auntie's godson? Yu, on the other hand, hugged his mother's waist tightly, unwilling to be hugged by her no matter what. Jiang Li was both embarrassed and amused. She looked up at Yun Shusha and teased, You're such a clingy child. He doesn't even want me to hug him. Mommy. Chapter 1839. Yun Shusha was amused by him. Because she was wearing a gown, she couldn't squat down and carry him. She could only lean over and pat his little head gently. She comforted him and said, Yo-Yo, Auntie is just joking with you. How could Mommy bear to abandon you? You're Mommy's baby. You're Mommy's favorite little sweetheart. Mommy can't bear to abandon you. Okay. Yo-Yo nodded and stuck out his tongue mischievously. He was so cute. Xiao Ichen ridiculed him from the side. It was obvious that this guy was saying sweet nothings on purpose to win Mommy's favor. Jiang Li pretended to be aggrieved and tugged at his sleeve. Yo-Yo, don't take it seriously. Auntie is just joking with you. Yo-Yo, don't be angry. Auntie is teasing you because she likes you. All right. Yo-Yo, don't be angry. Don't be angry. Yo-Yo thought to himself, I'm not angry, but can you not tug at my sleeve? I don't like you. In his heart, Jiang Li was already on par with the child abductor auntie. Children didn't like such jokes from adults. What child exchange? He didn't want that. He only had one mommy. No one could take her away from him. Jiang Li looked at Yo-Yo and said enviously, Aya, Shusha, you're so lucky. Look at your son. He's so obedient. That daughter of mine, let alone being easily coaxed, even a lollipop would foolishly run away with someone else. You can't lose your son. Look, he's so clingy to you. No one can coax him away. Yo-Yo sticks to me the most. In the past, there were colleagues who joked about this. At that time, Yo-Yo was still young. She was so scared that she threw herself into my arms and cried loudly. Many people tried to comfort her in a flurry, but they managed to. Yun Shusha recalled that when Yo-Yo was 4 years old, one of her colleagues saw how cute Yo-Yo was and wanted to carry him home to play with. Hence, she deliberately lied to Yo-Yo that she wanted to bring him home to be her son. Yo-Yo was so scared that she broke down and cried. In the end, her eyes were red and swollen. She was extremely sad. Jiang Li continued, Then, Yo-Yo, are you willing to be my son-in-law? Son-in-law? Yo-Yo pretended not to understand. She widened her eyes in confusion, but the image of Chanshan's unreasonable behavior appeared in her mind. She was speechless. That's right. In the future, you'll be my son-in-law and marry Chanshan. Are you willing? Jiang Li teased him. Yo-Yo immediately shook his head like a rattle drum. He did not want that. That Chanshan was unreasonable and arrogant. He did not want such an uncute wife. Jiang Li's expression became awkward. She could not get out of this embarrassing situation in front of everyone. She felt that her daughter was being despised by Yo-Yo. She forced a smile and asked, Why not? Because I want to stay by Mommy's side for the rest of my life. I don't want to get married. A naive and childish remark cleverly dispelled the awkward atmosphere and made the guests burst into laughter. It had to be said that Yo-Yo's IQ was extremely high. His EQ was also much higher than many adults. He knew how to save face for others. When he saw that Jiang Li was embarrassed, he deliberately said such childish words to tell her that he was not willing because he wanted to stay by Mommy's side for the rest of his life. Jiang Li was laughing in her heart, but her face was full of joy. This child is really smart. Haha. This little fellow. Chapter 1840. Even though she felt that it might not be a good thing for her child to stay by her side for the rest of his life. The child would eventually grow up. Even though she had raised him painstakingly, she still wished him well and hoped that there would be a considerate girl by his side. Even though she could not bear to part with Yo-Yo, she would not tie him down for the rest of his life. It was said that when a child grew up and a girl was about to get married, a father would feel as if a knife was being twisted in his heart, as if he had fallen out of love. Similarly, when a boy was about to get married, a mother would feel as if she was facing a great enemy. However, when the time came, she would still hope that her son would be happy. Our Qianqian likes you a lot. She has always said that she wants to marry you when she grows up. Jiang Li continued to encourage him. Yo-Yo, it's good that you marry our Qianqian. Think about it, you will definitely get married in the future. Even though you said that you want to stay by your mommy's side for the rest of your life, boys will eventually have to start their own families and careers when they grow up. Even if you say that you don't want her now, who knows, when a girl beckons you with her finger when you grow up, you might not want your mommy anymore. When that time comes, you will also have a wife. How will you still care about your mommy? However, Yo-Yo said mischievously, no, I won't. Mommy is my precious baby. How can I not want my mommy? The first criterion for me to marry a wife is to be filial to my mommy. Otherwise, I won't want her no matter how pretty she is. Ha ha ha. I didn't expect such a young child to be so filial. He's not simple. Yes. Most of the children nowadays are very willful. Yo-Yo is so sensible. It seems that Shusha has taught him well. Xiao Chen added, I don't want to get married in the future either. I just want to stay by mommy's side until we grow old. When mommy is old, I want to hold her hand and take care of her. Jiang Li was so jealous when she heard this. She thought about her spoiled daughter. She was so arrogant and willful. Not only was she immature, but she would also say things like, Mommy is so mean. Mommy doesn't dote on Qianqian at all. Qianqian doesn't want mommy anymore. Compared to Yo-Yo's willful words, she was so envious that her eyes almost turned red. Thinking of this, she suddenly felt a little resentful and said, Shusha, let me pinch you. You're so lucky. If I had two such sensible and obedient sons, I would wake up laughing even in my dreams. That daughter of mine only knows how to make me angry, but she's not sensible at all. Sigh, everyone says that girls are more sensible than boys, but now, this notion has really been shattered. Xiao Shui chimed in from the side, Shusha is very lucky. Look, she has such cute Xiao Bao and such a handsome husband. I can't be envious. Jiang Li joked, Shusha, don't you know how lucky you are? I must cherish the happiness I have now. A man as handsome as your husband who knows how to take care of you and dote on you is rare nowadays. You have to work harder to tie his heart down. If you don't keep a close eye on him, such a handsome husband will be taken away by another woman. You'll cry yourself to death. As soon as she finished speaking, the room fell into an awkward silence. It had to be said that Jiang Li's words were truly inappropriate. Chapter 1841. This person had just gotten engaged, yet she said such a thing. What did she mean by don't let other women lead you away? How could she make such an inappropriate joke in such an occasion? Jiang Li was not very knowledgeable. She usually stayed at home to take care of the children, and the people she interacted with were mostly young mothers. As a result, she lacked social skills. Hence, her low EQ was vividly reflected in this sentence. These words made Yun Shusha feel rather awkward. Even though she knew that Jiang Li did not have any ill intentions, and the subjective meaning of her words was to express her envy of her good fortune, it still made others feel uncomfortable. Xiao Shui also felt awkward. She did not expect Jiang Li to make such a joke. Hence, she tugged at Jiang Li's sleeve awkwardly. Jiang Li belatedly realized that her words were somewhat inappropriate in such a situation. Thus, she also felt embarrassed. Mu Yaja smiled elegantly and suddenly said, My wife is very good. Everyone was stunned and looked at him. However, as he smiled, he lowered his gaze and gazed tenderly at Yun Shusha's side profile. The tenderness in his eyes seemed to be able to squeeze water out of them. Even though he hadn't said anything, everyone in the room was caught off guard and fed a mouthful of dog food. Although the words "my wife is very good" did not have any flowery words, the adoration in them was obvious. Mu Yaja said casually, "With my wife around, no other woman can enter my eyes." His eyes were filled with her. His heart was filled with her. Who else could there be in his heart? Mu Yaja was not joking when he said this. It was from the bottom of his heart. Jiang Li was so envious that her eyes were sore. How romantic. Thinking about her husband, who was like a block of wood, when had he ever said such gentle and romantic words to her? Not to mention "I love you," even when they quarreled, he had never coaxed her or compromised. Jiang Li suddenly stopped talking. At this moment, she felt aggrieved. Perhaps it was because other people's happiness was too dazzling that she felt envious and jealous. Yun Shusha smiled when she heard this. She turned her head and gazed at him gently. Then, she curved her lips and whispered in a voice that only he could hear, "My husband is also very good. You know what? I've never envied anyone when I'm with you." Perhaps, there was nothing more blissful than this. She had never envied anyone else for being able to hold his hand and be with him. Therefore, she felt that she was the happiest woman in the world to have him. Yun Yecheng, who was standing at the side, was so touched that his eyes were about to tear up. He rubbed his eyes with his handkerchief, but he couldn't suppress the excitement in his heart. Perhaps, before today, he still had some doubts about this man's feelings. Did this man really love his daughter? Was he really sincere to his daughter? Could his daughter really be happy with him? There were so many question marks that he couldn't sleep well on the night before the engagement banquet. However, when he heard Mu Yaja's words, his heart immediately calmed down. Chapter 1842. His greatest wish was for his daughter to be happy. Now that he had fulfilled one of his wishes, he felt a sense of relief. Yun Yeho was also very emotional. He held his brother's hand and said happily, "Brother, you're so lucky. You can rest assured that Shusha has met such a good man." Yes. Yun Yecheng was still touched. Looking at Yun Shusha, he vaguely recalled the first time they met. When she was 9 years old, he saw her for the first time in the welfare home. At that time, she was skinny and tattered from head to toe. He could tell that her clothes were old and dirty. In the dormitory, she was huddled alone in a corner, hugging her knees helplessly. She looked around vigilantly at her surroundings with a blank and frightened gaze. When she saw him, she shrank into an even smaller ball in fear. She was like an injured animal, isolated and helpless. At that time, that pair of hurt and tired eyes touched him all of a sudden. Because of that fragile gaze, he felt a stab in his heart. At that moment, he decided to adopt this child without hesitation. Even if Li Qin protested, he did not care at all. When he brought her home, he doted on and protected her, treating her as if she was his own. Gradually, a father-daughter relationship developed between them. Even though there was no blood bond between them, he had never treated her as an outsider. She relied on him. He also doted on her like his own daughter. Humans were soft-hearted. Yun Na was insensible and disobedient, always making him angry and furious. Yun Shusha, on the other hand, cherished this hard-won kinship very much. When Yun Shusha was young, she adopted a stray dog, although it was later thrown away by Li Qin. This dog was very playful and adorable. Yun Shusha brought it home because she pitied it when she saw the children bullying it. Perhaps it was because it had been homeless since it was young, but after it was adopted, it was very obedient and never caused any trouble. Perhaps it was because it had been homeless and lonely for too long that it cherished this warmth more than its own life. Yun Shusha must be the same. It was precisely because she had been homeless and helpless when she was young that she wanted to work hard to protect her family when she had a home. He had never had it before, so he treasured it even more. Now, she had grown up and was standing beside another man. Her eyes were filled with happiness and her smile was like a flower. Yun Yecheng, on the other hand, felt as if a lifetime had passed. She finally had a home of her own. He was happy for her. His beloved daughter had finally met the most important man in her life. Gong Jie stood silently by the side without any expression on his face. But when he saw the happy smile on Yun Shusha's face, his heart was touched. At the banquet, Guests kept coming up to them to offer their heartfelt blessings. Especially when the royal ministers, princes, princesses, and the country's president kissed her and gave her their blessings, Yoon Shusha was flattered. She disappointingly thought that she had only seen these big shots on TV. She did not expect to receive their blessings today. She silently thought to herself, "Can I ask them for their autographs?" If Yo-Yo knew what she was thinking, he would definitely hate her for failing to live up to his expectations. Just as everyone finished giving their blessings, Gong Jie suddenly walked towards her. Chapter 1843. What beautiful fireworks! Yoon Shusha held his arm and leaned on his shoulder. "Did you prepare all of this?" He asked her. "Do you like it?" "I like it." I like it so much. I really like it." Yoon Shusha was touched. "Thank you. Mu Yaja." He caught on to her faulty wording and raised his eyebrows in dissatisfaction. "What should you call me?" Her face was a little red. She pursed her lips and said embarrassedly, "Isn't it inappropriate to call you husband now? If you can't call me that now, how long are you going to wait? Are you going to wait until my hair turns white? Until you call me hubby?" Mu Yaja said half jokingly, half seriously, "The engagement party is already held. Are you still thinking of running away from the marriage?" Yoon Shusha pushed his shoulder shyly and said unhappily, "No. You know that's not what I meant. Then what should you call me?" Mu Yaja patiently guided her. Yoon Shusha pouted and then secretly looked at his meaningful expression. Suddenly, she plucked up her courage and called, "Hubby. Good girl. My wife." He hugged her and kissed her amidst the fireworks and under everyone's stunned gazes. A bunch of fireworks slowly rose in the night sky and bloomed in the night sky. The romantic scene was frozen at this moment. It was night time. Mu Yaja was still entertaining the guests at the cocktail party. She returned to her room early and changed into her pajamas. Just as she was about to go to the bathroom to wash off her heavy makeup, her phone rang at the wrong time. She walked to the sofa in a light mood and hummed a song. She took out her phone from her bag and glanced at the screen. However, when she saw the name on the screen, her heart skipped a beat. Yoon Shusha could not help but feel suffocated. The words Jiyu Xingze continued to jump along with the ringtone. She actually felt inexplicably flustered. She glanced at the door before picking up the phone. Her heartbeat instantly sped up. "Hello. Xingze. Shusha, where are you?" On the other end, Jiyu Xingze's heavy and tired voice suddenly rang out. I heard that you had something to do, so the roadshow that was originally scheduled for today was postponed." Jiyu Xingze added. Only then did Yoon Shusha remember that the production team of The Green Apple had entered the promotional period and had started to hold a nationwide roadshow. The premiere was originally scheduled for today, but because she had applied for leave, Lin Fengtian had to postpone it for a few days. Initially, she was quite embarrassed. Because of her personal matters, she had affected the entire cruise schedule. She felt extremely guilty. However, Lin Fengtian had said that she was the female lead and that anyone could be absent except for her. Therefore, he did not hesitate to postpone the premiere. She was both grateful and guilty. However, Lin Fengtian laughed and said, "No matter how important it is not as important as your life. It's fine." Hence, when she received the superstar's call, the first thing she felt was immense guilt. "Yes." On the other end, Jiyu Xingze said slowly in an eerily calm voice, "I also heard that you are engaged. But you didn't invite me. Why?" Jiyu Xingze's slightly helpless voice made her heart beat even faster. He asked her why she did not invite him. Chapter 1844. It was because she was afraid. Afraid of his rejection. Afraid that Mu Yaja would be unhappy because of it. Yoon Shusha remained silent, not knowing how to speak. On the other end, Jiyu Xingze was silent for a while and said helplessly, "I thought that I shouldn't be absent for such an important event, but I didn't receive your invitation." He suddenly took a deep breath and, as if he had used up all his energy, questioned her silently, "Shusha, maybe I don't have the chance to work hard, but are you so stingy to give me the chance to give you my blessings? Are you so stingy to give me the chance to give you my blessings?" His voice was filled with bitterness. Her mind went blank at that moment. I thought that you didn't want to come. I thought you might not wish me well. Ha, he let out an indifferent laugh and said in a self-deprecating manner, I don't want to hear words that are too fake and insincere. You're too full of yourself. What do you mean by you thought? Suddenly, he said again, if you're really happy, what reason do I have not to give you my blessings? If you're really happy, what reason do I have not to give up on you? The last 4 words seemed to have escaped from the roots of his teeth as if he was gnashing his teeth. Yoon Shusha was stunned. For a moment, her heart was in a mess and she didn't know how to respond to him. At least let me give up, right? At least let me see with my own eyes how happy you are before I can truly let go, right? Ji Yuxingze suddenly broke down and said, at least give me a chance to give up, right? Yoon Shusha bit her lower lip hard and continued to take deep breaths. The guilt in her heart was still gushing out like an overflowing flood. I'm sorry, Xingze. Other than the words I'm sorry, she didn't know what else to say. Ji Yuxingze, on the other hand, was upset and inexplicably anxious. He raised his voice slightly and said unhappily, I didn't call to hear you say those words. Yoon Shusha pursed her lips, not knowing what to say. On the other end, Ji Yuxingze fell into a long silence. Finally, he took a deep breath and said in a hoarse voice, listen, Shusha, I've let go. You should be satisfied. You don't have to be on guard against me anymore. I've let go. I won't love you anymore, and I won't pester you anymore, I'm calling to wish you a happy engagement. I don't have any other intentions, so you don't have to think too much. She smiled. Thank you, Xing. Before she could finish her sentence, the person on the other end hastily hung up the phone. Beep, beep, beep. A series of busy tones made her brain completely tense up. Yoon Shusha's face froze, but she didn't react for a long time. In the Cheng Cheng apartment, Ji Yuxingze fell onto the sofa. His grip loosened as if he had lost all his strength. His phone fell onto the floor. Bang! The phone fell onto the floor. A crack appeared on the screen and it broke. Initially, he hadn't called to wish her well. He actually wanted to ask her, why does it have to be Muyaja? Could it be that he couldn't do it? He could also give her happiness. But at the same time, he asked himself, why does it have to be Yoon Shusha? Why couldn't it be other women? Chapter 1845. In the end, he even forgot what he wanted to say. He gave her a fake blessing and hurriedly hung up the phone. If he had listened to her voice for one more second, he would have broken down. Ji Yuxingze raised his head and looked at the ceiling with a pair of hollow eyes. His gaze was numb, but it was as if he wanted to look through the ceiling. This was the first time he had fallen deeply in love with someone, but in the end, she had pushed him away. So this was what it felt like to be abandoned. Ji Yuxingze clenched his fists unwillingly. His fingernails dug into his palms, but his senses seemed to be numb and he could not feel any pain. Or perhaps the pain in his heart was so excruciating that his senses seemed to be numb and he could not feel any pain at all. In the end, he had lost, even the chance to work hard. Qin-ju knocked on the door for a long time, but there was no response. He took out his keys and opened the door. When he entered, he saw that the living room was dark. He turned on the lights and saw Ji Yuxingze sitting on the sofa. He was expressionless and looked at the ceiling indifferently. His cell phone had fallen to the side and the screen was broken. He immediately walked up to him. What's wrong? Ji Yuxingze did not speak. Qin-ju frowned. He had no idea what had happened. He frowned and teased him half-jokingly, why do you look like your soul has left your body? What happened? Nothing. Ji Yuxingze was inexplicably irritable. He glared at him and said impatiently, what could have happened to me? As he spoke, he stood up from the sofa and stumbled toward the table. He had not been able to sleep properly for 2 days and 2 nights. Hence, he was in a daze. He supported himself on the table and held the cup with difficulty. His back view was inexplicably stiff and cold. Behind him, Qin-ju was at a loss for a moment. Then, he pursed his lips and said awkwardly, you seem to be in a bad mood today. Shut up. Ji Yuxingze suddenly threw the cup on the floor and turned around angrily. I told you to be quiet. Qin-ju was rather shocked. This seemed to be the first time she had been so angry at him since they met. In the past, although Xingzhe's personality was a little cold, even if he was in a bad mood, he would quietly close himself up from the beginning to the end. He would never throw such a big tantrum. Qin Ju was completely dumbfounded by this furious roar. Just as he was about to lose his temper, he saw Jiyu Xingzhe's body sway. He immediately went forward to support his arm. As soon as she got close to him, she smelled the strong scent of alcohol. You drank." Jiyu Xingzhe impatiently pushed him aside and said coldly, "It's none of your business." "What do you mean it's none of my business? How can I not care about you when you look like this?" Qin Ju did not give up and went forward to support his arm. Jiyu Xingzhe seemed to have lost all his strength. His body tilted and he leaned weakly against Qin Ju. Even though his entire body was weak, he still pushed him away regardless. "Let go of me. Leave me alone." Qin Ju did not know whether to laugh or cry, as if he was coaxing a willful child. He said, "I want to let go of you, but now, you're clearly the one leaning on me." Jiyu Xingzhe was about to speak when he suddenly coughed violently. Cough, cough, cough. Chapter 1846. At first, he thought that he was just coughing a few times, but in the end, it was getting out of hand and he was coughing as if he had overdrawn his energy. Qin Ju's half-joking expression suddenly disappeared and he anxiously held him up. However, he realized that Jiyu Xingzhe's originally fair face was now pale. "What's wrong with you?" Qin Ju was extremely worried. From the looks of it, it seemed like his stomach was acting up. He had a very serious stomach problem and he rarely drank. It wasn't that he couldn't hold his liquor, but if he drank too much alcohol, his stomach problem would act up. The last time his stomach problem acted up, it was because he drank a few glasses of wine at a social event. At the hotel, Jiyu Xingzhe had just opened the door when he fainted at the entrance. He was hurriedly sent to the hospital, where they found out that his stomach was bleeding. This time, his symptoms were exactly the same as the previous time. Qin Ju couldn't help but wonder if he had drunk too much alcohol after not eating for 2 days and 2 nights. At the thought of this, Qin Ju supported him and walked out of the door without any explanation. Jiyu Xingzhe pushed him away and frowned. "What are you doing?" "I'm taking you to the hospital. Looking at you, I'm worried that your stomach is acting up. Get lost." Jiyu Xingzhe pushed him away in frustration. "Why are you haunting me like a ghost? Did I ask you to control me?" "Xingzhe, don't be willful. Your body is already like this and you're still drinking. Have you ever thought about your own health?" "I don't need to think. I just want to be quiet and don't let anyone disturb me, whether it's you or anyone else. Stay away from me." Jiyu Xingzhe's eyes were filled with anxiety. After he finished speaking expressionlessly, his body swayed and he finally couldn't take it anymore. His vision turned black and he lost consciousness. On the other end, Yun Shusha stared at the phone screen with her mouth agape. Looking at the phone that had been hung up, she couldn't calm down for a long time. Suddenly, a devilish voice came from behind her. "What are you doing?" Yun Shusha jumped in shock. In her great shock, the phone slipped from her hand due to her nervousness and fell to the ground with a loud thud. "Ah!" She turned around abruptly, only to see Mu Yaja standing behind her without her knowing. Her eyes widened in shock, and due to an inexplicable fluster, her expression became a little unnaturally nervous. When did you come in?" Mu Yaja looked at her calmly. His deep eyes fell on her face, but he smiled. Just now." "Just now?" "Yes. Why didn't you knock before coming in?" When Mu Yaja heard this, he raised his head and elegantly looked around the room. He asked calmly, "This is our room. I don't think I need to knock on the door." There was panic in Yun Shusha's eyes. She patted her thundering chest, clearly frightened by his sudden appearance. She rebuked, "Why are you like a cat? You don't even make a sound when you walk. I didn't even notice you standing behind me. You were too engrossed in the phone call." Mu Yaja paused and looked at the phone that had fallen on the floor. His eyes flashed with suspicion. "Who were you calling?" "I didn't call anyone." Yun Shusha was a little flustered. She immediately bent down as if she had a guilty conscience and wanted to pick up the phone. Chapter 1847. She didn't know why, but when her phone fell into his hands, Her heart started beating wildly uncontrollably. What about me? Muyaja laughed. Why are you stammering? It's as if you have a guilty conscience. Shusha's heart skipped a beat as she looked at him in disbelief. Muyaja pretended to examine her expression seriously and suddenly asked in a deep voice, You look so nervous. Are you doing something bad behind my back? No. Shusha immediately snatched the phone from his hands and casually made up an excuse. I just wanted to see if my phone was broken. As she said this, she seriously examined the screen to see if it was cracked. Muyaja looked at the phone and then at her before asking out of the blue, Who's calling? Muyaja frowned. You can't tell me? No, Shusha explained awkwardly. It was Chinju who called. He informed me of the upcoming schedule and asked me to prepare for the premiere of The Green Apple. Muyaja pursed his lips and stared at her. Suddenly, his lips curled up and he said, You lying? No. Shusha felt extremely guilty, but she still straightened her back and looked up at him. What do you mean by lying? I'm just telling the truth. All right, I'm just teasing you. Upon hearing this, Shusha's face turned pale. The huge rock that had been hanging in her throat finally fell to the ground. She relaxed for a moment but was shocked to find that she was breaking out in cold sweat. Muyaja smiled gently as if he didn't notice anything strange about her. He immediately reminded her, It's getting late. Hurry up and take a shower. Oh, Shusha nodded in a daze. At this moment, her mind was in a mess and she didn't know what she was thinking. Oh my god. Subconsciously, she actually lied. It was Jiyu Xingze who had called and nothing had happened, but she was still afraid that he would be angry, so she subconsciously mentioned Chinju and avoided Jiyu Xingze. She still could not forget the confrontation between Muyaja and Jiyu Xingze on set that day. She naturally wanted to avoid such a thing at all cost. But Muyaja was so smart. She didn't know when he came in or when he was standing behind her. She also didn't know how much of her phone call he had heard. She didn't know if he would see through her lies. If he saw through it, it would be counterproductive. There was clearly nothing going on, but he was afraid that he would misunderstand on a deeper level. Shusha was confused. She wanted to tell him the truth, but in front of Muyaja, she didn't dare to mention the name Jiyu Xingze. Now that he had relented and told her to take a shower, she felt as if she had been granted amnesty and walked towards the bathroom. However, she had just taken a step when Muyaja suddenly grabbed her waist from behind and pulled her into his embrace. Shusha couldn't help but feel nervous and on tenterhooks. She was afraid that he would discover something and was planning to force a confession out of her. Chapter 1848. Don't dawdle. I'm waiting for you, he said in a gentle voice. Holding her waist, he took advantage of the situation and lingered on her chest. His slightly hoarse voice was bewitching. Don't make me wait for too long. Shusha's heart stopped and her face instantly flushed red like steam. What are you talking about? Blushing, she pushed him away and headed to the bathroom with her head lowered. Perhaps she was too nervous, or perhaps she was so shy that she forgot herself, but when she entered the bathroom, she slammed her head against the door frame, causing her to grimace in pain. Muyaja's lips stiffened as he watched her holding her forehead in pain and plunging into the bathroom. When she closed the door, the smile on Muyaja's face froze in an instant. He slowly focused his gaze and a cold glint flashed across his eyes. After the engagement party ended, she spent 2 days with him on the island before hurrying back to the set. She was already deeply grateful that the production crew had given her a 7-day break. Hence, 2 days after the engagement party ended, she hurried back. For 2 consecutive days and nights, she filmed 2 daytime scenes and drove through the night. Shusha gritted her teeth and put in all her effort to finish filming the scenes that she had been delayed for the past few days. As soon as she finished filming, she immediately applied for a leave of absence. Lin Fengtian had put her on the schedule for a whole week. Of course, Lin Fengtian specially went to the production crew of Lethal Beauty to inform Jiyu Xiaoyang. The two of them had a good relationship, so Lin Fengtian's one sentence was enough for Jiyu Xiaoyang to approve her leave. The Green Apple went through a long post-production process. In order to strive for perfection, Lin Fengtian delayed the post-production process for a long time. However, it was also because of this excellent post-production that it piqued the interest of the film's fans. On the internet, many netizens expressed their strong anticipation for this film. Before the premiere, there was a screening of the film with 100 people. Many fans of the original novel watched the screening and said that the film was great. The nationwide roadshow tour was about to begin. In order to promote the movie, Lin Fengtian was extremely spirited. He was prepared to win 24 roadshows nationwide in one go. In addition to the major provincial capitals, some prosperous second-tier cities were also on the list. He was full of confidence in this movie. He vowed that he would be the box office champion of the romance movie at Christmas and the end of the year. With this ambition, he was fully prepared. The early stage of publicity was almost explosive. Just the advance trailer alone had produced 5. Relying on his own rich resources, he bombarded the various satellite channels one after another. The theme song directly jumped to Yinyu TV's #1. Many artists had recorded VCRs to congratulate Lin Fengtian on his success at the box office. It had to be said that although Lin Fengtian had the reputation of a devil director and everyone on the set was afraid of him, it had to be said that his popularity was ridiculously good. Just by confirming the lineup of well-known directors and A-list celebrities that would be attending the premiere, coupled with the presence of various media outlets, this huge lineup could be said to be magnificent. The release of the movie coincided with Christmas Day. Lin Fengtian even said that he would be the box office champion that day. His wild ambition was self-evident. One had to know that this was not the only movie that would be released on Christmas Day. Chapter 1849. Generally speaking, the release cycle of a movie was about 20 days to 2 months. The more powerful the director was, the higher the production rate and the longer the release cycle. Moreover, with Jiyu Xingze around, Lin Fengtian was very confident about the box office. Yun Shisha, on the other hand, was under unprecedented pressure. This was her first film, and it was also her first time playing the female lead as a newcomer. If she was not famous enough and could not hold up the box office, she would definitely be upset if she dragged the whole crew down. However, Qin Ju comforted her. With Lin Fengtian and Jiyu Xingze, the two leaders of the box office, even if she was not famous enough, the box office results would not be too bad. The crew had prepared a few gowns, but Yun Shisha had been putting on some weight recently. Qin Ju was worried that she would screw up and it would be awkward if she could not fit into the gowns, so he urged her to lose weight. Of course, in such a short period of time, the so-called method of losing weight was also quite rough. For the premiere, she had starved for 2 days before she was able to wear the gown perfectly. Lin Fengtian was only satisfied when he saw it. However, on the day of the premiere, when Yun Shisha arrived at the venue, she realized that all the crew members were there, except for Jiyu Xingze. She did not see him. Was he going to miss the premiere? Yun Shisha was worried that something might have happened to him, so she tried to ask Qin Ju about it. Qin Ju replied vaguely, "He will be here, but something happened, so he might be a little late. But he will definitely be here before the premiere." Yun Shisha frowned. She was a little worried, but she did not show it on her face. Jiyu Xingze finally arrived with more than half an hour to the start of the event. However, when he appeared, it was with a rather grand entourage. 4 bodyguards led the way, along with the personal doctor, stylist, and assistant. More than a dozen people escorted him into the dressing room. Yun Shisha suddenly received a phone call from Yun Qinli. "Sister Shisha, I heard that it's the premiere of The Green Apple today. Jiyu Xingze will be there too, right?" "Yes." "Then, can you help me get an autograph? Please, please. I'm Xingze's hardcore fan, so I don't ask for much. I just want an autograph." Yun Qinli begged again. Yun Shisha only said perfunctorily, "I'm very busy. If there's a chance, I'll definitely do it for you." With that, she hung up the phone impatiently and sat in the dressing room, her mind in a mess. 10 minutes later, Jiyu Xingze finished his makeup and walked out of the dressing room. She looked up at him and saw his pale, sickly face. Even though his handsome face had been carefully groomed by the stylist, it was not difficult to see that he was extremely exhausted at the moment. His face was pale, and his forehead was dripping with cold sweat. His thin lips were tightly pursed and dry. Even though he had applied lipstick, it still couldn't hide his weak breath. Especially from his tightly knitted brows, it was obvious that his body was in a very bad condition. Yoon Shusha couldn't help but ask, "Chin-ju, what's wrong with Xingzhe? I see that his face is very pale. He seems to be sick." Chin-ju frowned but did not say a word. Suddenly, he said slowly, "He's attending the premiere because this might be his last movie." As soon as Chin-ju finished speaking, Yoon Shusha widened her eyes in shock and looked at him in disbelief. "His last movie? Chapter 1850. What do you mean by that? I don't quite understand." "It's nothing." Chin-ju smiled faintly, but there was nothing he could do. He said, "His health condition is indeed worrying. Some time ago, he drank too much and was rushed to the hospital. His stomach was bleeding and his condition worsened. He has been on a drip for the past few days and his body is very weak." "Bleeding from his stomach?" Yoon Shusha was shocked when she heard that. "Yes. Didn't you know?" Chin-ju glanced at her. "He has a very serious stomach problem and he acts erratically. His daily routine is very irregular. Usually, when he suffers from a stomach problem, his meals have to be taken care of. But a few days ago, he went to drink to drown his sorrows. I don't know what has gotten into him. I think he doesn't want his body anymore." Yoon Shusha's heart suddenly skipped a beat. He has been very dispirited recently. In the past, he was arrogant and aloof. He had always sealed himself in his own world. I've been with him for so long and finally opened up half of his heart. But now, he has closed it again and returned to how he used to be. The more Chin-ju spoke, the more resentful he became. What a good-for-nothing brat. He is indeed worrying. He doesn't know how to take care of himself. I told him that he doesn't want me to take care of him. He said that he can take care of himself. But what happened in the end? His stomach problem worsened. The doctor said that if this goes on, there is a risk that he will become cancerous." Chin-ju sighed. Obviously, he was both mentally and physically exhausted. To him, Jiyu Xingzhe was once his business partner. He was an artist that he had groomed and groomed. He was a superstar that he had personally created. He was also a close friend that he cared about the most. Now that Jiyu Xingzhe was so dispirited that he did not have any appetite for food or drink and repeatedly ruined his health, Chin-ju could not wait to give him a good beating. He wanted to see if he could wake him up from his stupor. Yoon Shusha's heart was in a mess. At that moment, she was worried and confused. What did Chin-ju mean by the last movie? Was he going to quit the entertainment industry? Actually, withdrawing was a good thing. After being in the entertainment industry for so many years, Jiyu Xingzhe had accumulated a considerable amount of assets. If he were to retire from the entertainment industry and return to a normal life, it would not be a bad thing. This way, he would have more energy to take care of himself and his body. On the contrary, Yoon Shusha hoped that he would quit the entertainment industry. However, Chin-ju seemed to have read her mind as he suddenly said, "I don't think it's a good thing for Xingzhe to leave the entertainment industry. He made his debut when he was very young. His career has always been the core of his life. If he withdraws now, his life will have lost its meaning." As he spoke, he extinguished the cigarette in his hand in the ashtray, deeply worried. He rarely smoked, but recently, he was very addicted to smoking. He smoked a pack a day, one cigarette after another. The ashtray was already full of cigarette butts. Yoon Shusha didn't know what to say. The movie premiere started. This was a competition for fame and fortune, and also an ambitious campaign to build momentum. On the stage, all the main cast members sat on the high stools and faced the media's questions one by one. Yoon Shusha, who was sitting next to the superstar, could clearly feel his hand trembling uncontrollably as he held the microphone. Her heart clenched tightly in her chest at the sight of this. Chapter 1851. The media asked, "Xingzhe, may I ask, what is your biggest gain from this movie?" Jiyu Xingzhe held the microphone and answered, "I think my biggest gain would be the memories of working with such an outstanding director like Director Lin and so many hardworking actor. Everyone worked very hard to make this movie. Because this movie was adapted from a famous novel, Many fans of the novel were looking forward to it. In order to live up to the expectations of the fans, everyone worked very hard. Media, what do you feel about your first teen movie when you first debuted, and now, after 10 years of your debut, acting in another teen movie? Ji Xingzi said, actually, teen movies are not just about feelings. The biggest gain is that after 10 years of constant practice, my acting skills have improved tremendously. The Green Apple is probably a milestone in my acting career. I put a lot of effort into this movie, and I hope that the fans will be satisfied with it. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly moved the microphone away and covered his mouth as he coughed a few times. The hoarse sound of coughing entered her ears clearly. Yun Shusha couldn't help but clench her fists. The media suddenly asked a sharp question. May I ask, what are your expectations for the box office? Director Lin said that he expects the box office to exceed 2 billion. Of course, no matter what the final box office is, in my heart, The Green Apple is a rare and good movie. I hope that everyone will like it. That one sentence was enough to diffuse the incisive question. All the media sighed. In front of Ji Xingzi, they often couldn't get any benefits. Thus, they started to change their target and launched a fierce attack on Yun Shusha. However, after so many live rehearsals, Yun Shusha's ability to react on the spot was not inferior. No matter how sharp the question was, it was not difficult for her to answer it. The media was in despair. At the end of the ceremony, Ji Xingzi and Yun Shusha raised champagne and slowly poured it on the ice sculpture of the name The Green Apple. After the premiere, Yun Shusha silently followed Ji Xingzi out of the theater. Along the way, she saw Ji Xingzi coughing incessantly. She was scared out of her wits. Several times, when he coughed violently, she was afraid that he would cough up blood. At a corner, he was suddenly bumped into by a staff member who was hurriedly passing by. His body swayed slightly and he was about to fall. Yun Shusha quickly supported him from behind. Are you all right? The staff member was also shocked. When he saw that it was Ji Xingzi, he trembled with fear and wanted to help him up in a hurry. However, when he saw Ji Xingzi's cold eyes, he tactfully withdrew his hand, apologized, and quickly ran away. Ji Xingzi supported himself against the wall and stood up straight. He brushed her hand away coldly. Yun Shusha's face was a little stiff. Then, she calmed down and said with a frown, "Let's go to the hospital." Ji Xingzi slowly turned his head and glanced at her. Yun Shusha said worriedly, "Your body is too weak. There are still 24 road shows left. You won't be able to take it. What do you mean by this?" Ji Xingzi suddenly questioned her. She was stunned. He smiled, but it seemed like he was mocking her. "Are you concerned about me?" Chapter 1852. Ji Xingzi said coldly and turned around. Just when she thought that he was going to leave, he did not move. Instead, he said slowly in a weak voice, "Shusha, do you know? I've thought of countless possibilities between us, but I never thought that it would end like this." Ji Xingzi laughed mockingly. "I hope that you've made the right choice." After saying that, he supported his heavy body and slowly left. Yun Shusha watched his resolute back view, but she could feel the heaviness in his cold words. It was as if his heart had been pierced by a knife and was bleeding profusely. On the way home, Yun Shusha sat in the back seat. She seemed to have lost her soul and was distracted. Yo-Yo made a call to her. She said cheekily, "Mommy, I watched the live broadcast of your movie premiere. You're so beautiful today. You've reached a new height. Mommy, when are you coming home?" Yun Shusha forced a smile. "I'm already on the way. I'll be home in about 15 minutes. Mommy, do you want to have supper?" "It's okay." On the other end of the line, Yo-Yo sensed that Yun Shusha was in a daze and sounded disappointed. She asked worriedly, "Mommy, what's wrong? You sound like you're not happy. Did someone bully you? Or did someone make you angry?" "No. I'm just a little tired." Yo-Yo smiled and said coquettishly, "It's okay. When Mommy comes home, Yo-Yo will massage your shoulders." "Okay." Yo-Yo is so obedient. After hanging up the phone, Yun Shusha's arms hung down weakly. She looked out of the window at the passing scenery. Ji Xingzi's lonely voice still echoed in her ears. I've thought that there are countless possibilities between us. But he didn't expect it to end like this. Hopefully, you've made the right choice. Yoon Shusha closed her eyes and forced herself not to let her imagination run wild. As soon as she got home, Yo-Yo and Xiao Chen rushed to the entrance to welcome her. They helped her take her coat and bag. The two little lads welcomed her into the living room in a flurry. One of them was in charge of massaging her shoulders and the other was in charge of massaging her legs. They were extremely busy. Yo-Yo suddenly smiled mischievously. "Mommy, you must have worked hard today. I watched the premiere today. Mommy is the prettiest among all the celebrities." Little Chen cheered from the side. "Oh, my. I've seen the trailer, and I think it's really good. Tomorrow, Yo-Yo and I will book the entire theater to watch a movie for Mommy." "You're so corrupt," Yo-Yo said angrily. Xiao Chen was not to be outdone. He said, "Of course, I have to support Mommy's movie. I'm using my pocket money to book the entire theater. What's wrong with that?" He then smiled and said, "Mommy is so beautiful. It'll be a wonder if the movie doesn't explode at the box office." Yoon Shusha was stunned. "You want to book the entire theater to watch the movie?" "Yes." Xiao Ichen thought to himself. He had already contacted a few theaters through his daddy and booked the entire theater to boost the box office on Christmas Day. Chapter 1853. He had put in a lot of effort. Sob 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 sob. How could that idiot Yo-Yo understand? However, he had wronged Yo-Yo. In reality, Yo-Yo didn't say it out loud, but what about the truth? He had already booked all of Huanyu's cinemas and bought a few million yuan worth of movie tickets. Furthermore, he had sent out the list in advance. Under Laji Holdings, any customer who bought over 500 yuan on Christmas Day would receive 2 free movie tickets for the Green Apple. Wouldn't it be a waste to give them away for free? Not only could it increase their sales, but it could also support their Mommy's movie. Yo-Yo had made a brilliant move. Compared to him, Xiao Chen was indeed a little too naive. Yo-Yo snorted coldly and secretly looked down on Xiao Chen. Yoon Shusha looked at the two little clowns. No matter how bad her mood was, it instantly lightened up a lot. She hugged the two cute little guys and smiled. "You two are really. Mommy loves you to death. Mommy loves me. As for that idiot Muichen, Mommy shouldn't love him," Yo-Yo said coldly in her arms. Xiao Ichen cried out pitifully, "Yo-Yo, you're ostracizing me." "Who's ostracizing you?" Yo-Yo snorted arrogantly again and said lightly, "I don't want to be in the same team as an idiot like you. You even booked the entire cinema. Muichen, you're really something. It seems like Daddy gave you a lot of pocket money." Xiao Ichen poked his fingers and said pitifully, "What? I worked so hard to save up this pocket money. Go ahead and be happy. How many kids your age have a few million yuan in pocket money?" Yo-Yo said coldly. Muichen pouted and sulked. Yo-Yo seemed to feel uncomfortable if he didn't bicker with him for a day. After spending so much time with him, although he was used to his arrogance and sharp tongue, it still hurt to be ridiculed once in a while. "All right. You two, stop fooling around." Yoon Shusha scolded softly and patted the two little guys' butts. "Hurry up and go take a shower." "Mommy, we've already showered." "Smell me. Do I smell good?" Xiao Ichen hugged Yoon Shusha and fooled around in her arms. After the shower, it's getting late. It's time to go to bed. She hurried the two children to bed. "You still have school tomorrow." "Mommy, tomorrow is Sunday." Yo-Yo's words reminded her. She looked at the calendar and realized with a start that she had been so busy these past few days that she had lost track of time. Tomorrow was indeed Sunday. "All right. Mommy knows her mistake. Mommy will read you a story, okay?" Yoon Shusha coaxed gently. Upon hearing that she would read a story, Xiao Chen immediately got down from her arms and ran back to the bedroom happily. "Mommy, I'll wait for you on the bed." Yoon Shusha was amused by him and burst out laughing. "This clown." Yo-Yo also said shyly, "Mommy, I'll wait for you on the bed too. I'll wait for you to tell me a story." After saying that, he also ran back to his bedroom. Yoon Shusha was in a mess. With these two little guys, life was really full of sunshine. Chapter 1854. At night, Yoon Shusha was lying on the bed, tossing and turning. She frowned and reflected on herself. Ji Yuxing's attitude towards her was completely different from before. In the past, he was as gentle as the spring breeze and extremely delicate to her. Now, he was a little impatient and cold towards her. He was deliberately distancing himself from her. Actually, keeping a distance was not necessarily a bad thing. Since he was indifferent to her, she would naturally keep a distance from him. This was good for both of them. Even if she did not like him, she should not get close to him. She did not like Ji Yuxing's, but perhaps, in some aspects, some of her actions might make others think that she was interested in him. Yun Shusha pursed her lips. She knew that Ji Yuxing's liked her, but she had already tried her best to keep a distance from him. Whenever he took a step closer, she would take a step back. However, she was at a loss as to what to do. She admired him as a respectable senior. He was good at acting and cared for every junior on set. He was gentle, considerate, knew how to take care of people, and was meticulous. Her feelings for him were probably like a junior sister's feelings for a senior brother. She relied on him. However, he did not seem to care for her like a senior brother did for a junior sister. Since that was the case, Yun Shusha made up her mind. No matter what he thought, she would keep a distance from him from now on and try her best to distance herself from him. Although she felt guilty, it did not mean that she would compromise on certain matters. Perhaps her previous attitude was too ambiguous, so much so that it could not be cut off. Since that was the case, she had already thought of how to deal with these matters. Mu Yaja had flown to another city on a business trip these few days. The internal affairs of the organization had piled up like a mountain. Hence, before he left yesterday, he purposely hugged her for a long time and refused to leave. When they parted, he hugged her and reminded her repeatedly, "Be good when I'm not around. Don't do anything that will make me worry. If you're too tired from work, take leave and rest. Don't worry about what others say. If they have anything to say about you, ask them to come to me directly. If you're too tired, don't work. I can take care of 100 of you." It was simply hard for them to part. Mu Yaja was naturally reluctant to go on a long trip right after the engagement. No matter how he thought about it, he couldn't bear to leave his lovely wife alone at home. If Yun Shusha's promotional schedule wasn't very full, he even had the impulse to carry her onto the plane. Yun Shusha didn't know whether to laugh or cry at his reluctance to part. She joked, "All right. Be serious. Those who don't know would think that you're going to the front lines and won't be coming back." Mu Yaja held her in his arms and kissed her passionately. Lu Jinyu and Jiang Shun, who were standing behind them, were tormented by this display of affection. After boarding the plane, the two of them protested loudly at Mu Yaja. They protested that Mu Yaja, as the boss, was not considerate of his underlings at all. He even showed off his affection in front of the single dogs. Especially Jiang Shun. Ji slumped in his seat and sighed. "Boss, you obviously don't like us, so you're torturing us in all sorts of ways. Isn't it enough to feed you tons and tons of dog food at your engagement ceremony? I can't take it anymore. I can't eat any more dog food. Otherwise, I'll be stuffed to death." Chapter 1855. Lu Jinyu also rubbed his belly and yelled, "I can't eat anymore. Jiang Shun, when we reach Luo City, let's go hunting. We have to find a girlfriend. Otherwise, we will be tortured to death by boss. You can find one if you want. I still want to follow boss. Boss has tortured me thousands of times, but I treat him like my first love." Jiang Shun took the opportunity to suck up to him. Mu Yaja snorted arrogantly. Lu Jinyu added, "No matter how you treat boss like your first love, he will still torture you thousands of times." Jiang Shun's heart was stifled. He secretly wiped his bitter tears. Lu Jinyu said jokingly, "Did you hear what boss said just now? Be good and stay at home. Don't do anything that makes me worry. Boss is with us physically, but his heart is with sister-in-law." Jiang Shun nodded indignantly. Mu Yaja said, "Your sister-in-law is prone to fooling around. Naturally, I have to take care of her." Unintentionally, he was fed another mouthful of dog food. Lu Jinyu's lips twitched violently. He really felt the 10,000 critical hits of love. It's so good to be in love. Jiang Shun sighed. Speaking of love, it seems to be a matter of my previous life. Nonsense. I saw a woman beside you last time. Lu Jinyu exposed him. Jiangshan said expressionlessly, "That's not my girlfriend, okay? The only relationship I've had was when I was in college. At that time, I was really young." Lu Jinyu was indeed the sharp-tongued king of Shengyu Financial Group. In fact, except for your youthful appearance, your bones are full of dust. Jiangshan was speechless. When Yun Shusha woke up, she found that the whole world had changed. It was not the world she was in, but the world of the internet. The first thing she did when she woke up in the morning was to open Weibo to read some offensive comments from fans. After reading 3 to 5 comments, she would be energized. She was originally pessimistically prepared to be attacked by fans of the novel when she opened Weibo. However, when she turned on her phone today, she suddenly felt that the world was a fantasy. Her latest Weibo post was a photo with Lin Fengtian backstage at the premiere. She was wearing a black dress, tall and elegant, and extremely beautiful. Before she went to bed yesterday, there were only a few hundred comments. When she woke up, she saw tens of thousands of comments and countless comments. She clicked on it and saw that her Weibo post had tens of thousands of new comments. What did that mean? In just one night, her Weibo followers had exceeded 5 million new. Yun Shusha was stunned. She thought that the system was retarded, but after flipping through a few pages, she found that every new comment was a live fan's message. The system did not malfunction at all. Fan A, Shusha, you. As a loyal fan of the Green Apple, I attended the movie premiere yesterday. Oh my god. This is the first time I've seen such a beautiful person in real life. Become your fan. Fan B, when I first saw your movie poster, you were so beautiful that you didn't look like a human being. I thought you had a strong post-production team. I didn't expect you to be so beautiful in real life. After watching the movie, in addition to your looks, I love your acting skills even more. Every look in your eyes is full of love. I'm going to watch it again today. Supporting you. Chapter 1856. Fan D, I used to hate you, because I'm Jiyu Xingza's diehard fan. Back then, I was wondering where you came from and how you could become Master Xingza's imaginary lover. But after watching the movie, I realized that you and Master Xingza are really compatible. I hope you two are really together. Heart, 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 heart. Fan E, Yun Shusha, what a poetic name. I had a deep impression of you, but I always thought you were like the other young actresses, with only looks and no acting skills. After watching the movie, I realized that you're a real idol with real skills. I hope you become more and more popular. Yun Shusha scrolled through the comments again and again. Most of them were from fans who had watched the movie and left comments on her Weibo. Of course, there were also anti-fans sent by other female celebrities and Jiyu Xingza's diehard fans who attacked her. But even so, many of her fans stood up to criticize and protest. Since her debut, this was the first time she felt the power of her fans. The feeling of being protected and respected was great. The feeling of using her acting skills to conquer the audience was great. The feeling of being able to gain fans because of her acting skills was great. Previously, Lin Fengtian had a private conversation with her and said that her looks were considered one of the best among the young actresses in the industry. She was even more beautiful than the rest. In terms of acting skills, she was also better than many others, but compared to some veteran actors who were at the pinnacle of acting, she was still lacking. He had told her more than once, looks will fade with the passing of youth. No one's looks can surpass the cruel years, but their acting skills can. A truly respectable actor not only has outstanding looks, but also a professional attitude and constantly improving acting skills. You have great potential. If you work harder, you'll definitely go far on this path. Yun Shusha saw the passionate comments from her fans and instantly felt her blood boil. She was greatly encouraged. That was enough. Her first film was able to gain the recognition of many fans of the original work. That was already the greatest affirmation for her. However, other than that, the surprise seemed to be far from that. Soon, news of success came from the crew. On the day of the premiere, the real-time box office sales had exceeded 100 million. Although there were still a few hours before the end of Christmas, the box office sales continued to increase. It had become a dark horse among the movies released on that day. It had even surpassed the results of many Hollywood blockbusters and won the crown. Movie fans went crazy. They were full of praises for the movie. The rating on Douban was as high as 9.2. Compared to the harsh rating system, this was considered an outstanding result. Even Lin Fengtian did not expect the movie to be so successful after it was released. It had far exceeded his expectations. The thing that Yoon Shusha didn't even dare to think about happened. She held her phone and looked at the rising real-time box office. The trending terms about the movie on Weibo had reached the top. Fans kept coming out of the theater and showing off their ticket stubs on Weibo. They were very positive about the movie. Many fans of the original novel expressed that the degree of restoration of the movie had far exceeded their expectations. Some of the most detailed plots in the original novel had been preserved and restored as much as possible. Chapter 1857. High box office sales but poor reviews were inevitable. Many movie adaptations of novels often attracted fans of the original novel to the cinema. However, due to the lack of originality, they ended up in an awkward situation. The author of the original novel, The Green Apple, posted on Weibo and posted a photo of the male and female leads kissing passionately in the cinema. She said, "Thank you, both of you are excellent actors. In my heart, both of you are Yin Xiaochuan and Yin Dongyu. Your performances are outstanding." Feeling flattered, Yoon Shusha gave him a thumbs up. On a morning without any work, she lazed in bed, holding her cell phone and reading the comments left by her fans. She really wanted to read every single comment, be it praise or criticism. She wanted to finish reading them all. When Yo-Yo knocked on the door and entered the room, he saw Yoon Shusha curled up under the covers, holding her cell phone and smiling. Seeing this, he couldn't help but feel better. "Mommy, you're so lazy today. It's already 9:30. Why are you still lazing around in bed?" Yo-Yo ran to the bed and made a move to lift her blanket. Yoon Shusha wrapped herself in the blanket and pleaded, "Yo-Yo, don't lift Mommy's blanket. Mommy knows her mistake." Yo-Yo pursed his lips and smiled helplessly. Then, he snuggled under the blanket and hugged her. He asked, "Mommy, what are you looking at?" "Weibo." "Oh." Yo-Yo raised his eyebrows and smiled. "I saw the entertainment news this morning saying that The Green Apple is ranked first in the real-time box office sales. Moreover, it's tens of millions of yuan behind the second-place movie. That's great." Yoon Shusha pressed her cell phone against her chest and said emotionally, "There's a sense of accomplishment that comes from working hard and being recognized. I feel very satisfied to have my efforts respected and acknowledged by others. It's early in the morning. Is Mommy so happy?" Yo-Yo was happy to see that she was in a good mood. After all, his mother had worked hard for this movie. Yo-Yo was naturally happy for her that it was a success. Yoon Shusha was also filled with emotions. At first, when the movie was released, she was very nervous. She felt that she wasn't good enough and wouldn't be recognized. Even if she worked hard, she might not be recognized by the fans. Moreover, on the day of the release, there would be many blockbusters competing with her. She did not want to be a hit, she only wanted to be able to fight steadily. At the very least, she did not want to be known as a beauty with poor acting skills. When it came to acting, it was purely out of interest and not because of the vanity of wanting to be famous. In the evening, the real-time box office sales were finally confirmed. On the day of the screening of The Green Apple, it had achieved a box office of 150 million yuan, breaking Lin Fengtian's expectations. That night, the film crew held a sensational celebration party. Although Jiyu Xingze was absent, all the main cast members present were looking forward to the final box office earnings of the film. Everyone believed that the final box office sales of the movie would definitely exceed Lin Fengtian's expectations. 2 billion shouldn't be too difficult to conquer. On the night of the celebration party, many media outlets participated in the party and published many articles. Huan Yu struck while the iron was hot. They threw in a lot of resources and carried out the post-production publicity. It was almost explosive publicity. The front pages of all the major web portals, Weibo, forums, Tiebar, and online guilds were bombarded one after another. Almost everyone knew about this movie. Chapter 1858. The production crew pulled open the curtains of the nationwide roadshow. At the start, there were a few thousand audience members at the premiere, and at the end, there were tens of thousands of movie fans at Beijing University. The first roadshow was very successful. Many netizens also spontaneously promoted the movie online, and there were endless positive reviews. Many people who did not pay attention to movies noticed this movie with high positive reviews, so they all went to the cinema to see it. The movie officially entered the competition for the Lunar New Year slot, and all the studios started to work hard. Whether it was publicity or hype, everyone wanted to get a share of the pie during the golden Lunar New Year slot at the end of the year. The battle for the box office was in full swing. After the first day, the box office decline that Lin Fengtian was worried about did not happen. On the contrary, it gradually increased. On the fifth day of release, the box office had already broken the 500 million mark and was heading towards the 1 billion mark. This was probably Lin Fengtian's most outstanding movie ever since he entered the industry. In the past, the teen movies were praised for being good, but not very popular. He had filmed so many movies, from tens of millions to hundreds of millions at the box office. Any movie that could break the 1 billion mark was almost a mythical existence. However, Lin Fengtian had high hopes for the movie. Hence, he worked even harder to promote the movie. All the main cast members acted as if they were on steroids, and they put in their best effort to perform. After Christmas, a few movies were released one after another. Most of them were crudely produced movies that investors had invested in to rush for the golden Lunar New Year slot. Whether it was a comedy, an action movie, or a thriller movie, the publicity made it sound dignified, and it took 10 years to polish a sword. But what about the inside story? The entire movie cycle was only a few months, so how good could the finished product be? Without a good script, even the most basic logic did not make sense. They pulled in a few box office leaders and worked hard to create a movie, just to rush for the Lunar New Year slot to make money. In the past, this was basically a tried and tested model. But this time, under the pincer attack of the Green Apple and a few Hollywood blockbusters, a few commercial movies failed miserably. One of the comedies was even more interesting. Later on, it even sparked a war between the fans of the Green Apple and the film crew. The reason was that there was a Hong Kong male artiste in this comedy. Before the movie was released, no one knew if he was deliberately hyping things up or trying to please the public, but he actually posted on Twitter some insulting remarks about China and gangsters. He even said, "The mainland audience is very stupid." Hong Kong and Taiwanese artistes came to the mainland to make money, but the mainland audience is still supporting them like idiots. Anyway, I support XINGGNGDULI, but, even so, there will still be audiences who will buy my movies. This explosive statement caused an uproar in the Chinese entertainment industry. Yoon Shusha was no stranger to this male artist. Previously, when she was on the show, this male artist was a guest and recorded with her. Backstage, he actually tried to take advantage of her and got slapped by her in return. The man was so angry that he insulted her with Hong Kong accent. He was an artist with a very bad character. Yoon Shusha only had disgust for him. Now, he even made such a brainless statement. Chapter 1859. Lin Fengtian was even more disdainful. He came all the way to the mainland to make money and even scolded the mainland audience for being brainless. It's an insult to the fans that such an artist exists in the entertainment industry. The investors of the comedy were dumbfounded. The facts proved that the male artist was not deliberately sensationalizing or playing to the gallery. He was a gangster in his bones. In the end, he went overboard. Hence, the movie called The Secret Service Team Next Door triggered a large-scale boycott by the netizens. The investors complained incessantly. They worked through the night to remove the artist's name from the poster. Scenes involving him in the movie were deleted as much as possible. He, who was supposed to be the male lead, was edited to be a passerby. But what was the point of cutting out the male lead's scenes just like that? Moreover, this person's comments had seriously hurt the feelings of the mainland audience. Even if the investors tried their best to salvage the situation, what was the use? On the day of its release, The box office was dismal. The netizens joined forces to boycott the movie and only earned a few million at the box office. It was utterly embarrassing. There were even netizens who questioned why a movie with a gangster artist was still released in theaters. Many theaters were so frightened that they pulled the movie from their shelves and reduced its screening rate to 0. The investors, who were originally full of themselves, were dealt a painful blow. They had been preparing for months for the moment of profit. Because of this brainless artist, the box office was so dismal. Hence, the investors issued a ban on the male artist. A few days later, an explosive misunderstanding broke out on the internet. A netizen reported that when she went to the cinema to buy a ticket, she had wanted to watch The Green Apple. In the end, she did not get a printed ticket but a handwritten one. She suspected that a movie had stolen the box office of The Green Apple. Following that, many netizens commented. Some said that they had wanted to watch The Green Apple, but ended up getting tickets for the Secret Service team next door. She tried to reason with the cinema but was met with rolling eyes. This was exposed on the internet, and there were even screenshots as proof. Many netizens also responded to this problem. Most of them had bought tickets for The Green Apple, but ended up getting tickets for the Secret Service team next door. Later, after a media investigation, the results were that the Secret Service team next door earned a few million at the box office, but the attendance was extremely low. It was only 0.1%. What did that mean? In other words, hundreds of thousands of people had bought tickets, but only a few hundred people had walked into the theater. It really made one not know whether to laugh or cry. She bought a movie ticket but didn't watch it. What did this mean? This meant that the Secret Service team next door was suspected of stealing the box office. If the fake box office sales were excluded, then the box office sales for the first day of the Secret Service team next door would probably be less than a few tens of thousands. Later, the Judicial Department got involved, and the result was that the investors didn't want the box office to be too dismal and lose face, so they reached a consensus with many cinema chains. When the audience bought tickets for The Green Apple, the box office would be included in the box office of the Secret Service team next door through under-the-table manipulation. The production team of The Green Apple sued the producers of the Secret Service team next door and the cinemas involved in the incident, seeking compensation of several million yuan. In this way, the production crew of The Green Apple had been hyped up.